Hello all and welcome to TFF Podcast by Fantasy Football Hub, our third episode of the 2021-22 season as we talk all things Telegraph Fantasy Football, my favourite time of the year. My name is Fergie and I'm joined as usual by two superb Telegraph Fantasy managers. Firstly, Luke Wilson. Happy Christmas, Happy New Year, Luke. And how has Telegraph been treating you since the last podcast?
Yeah, good. Doing all right, I think. So got lots of transfers. Got my main team, which I'll talk about. It's about 340 overall. I've got one that's got more transfers and is doing slightly better. It's just outside the top 300. So weird position being this high up with this many transfers at this stage of the season. So yeah, interesting. But I've noticed you've gone ahead of me in the mini league. So I want to find out how many transfers you've got.
We will. I will release all when we get to our teams. I was just thinking it's a very interesting season this season. I think all three of us are actually doing pretty well in a pretty good position with lots of transfers in hand, which is quite strange for us because normally we're bemoaning our luck and how we run out of transfers and wherever else. But this season seems to be a season where, you know, one, two, or even three of us could potentially have, you know, our best ever seasons maybe. So yes, let's firstly introduce the Hub's resident statistician, Carl Weeks, who is also flying in Sky, by the way, 8th and 25th overall in Sky. Very, very well played, Carl. How have things been for you?
Hi both, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to Indeed. One and all, as well as you two. It's been going very, very well in life in general and in all my fantasy games, so I've really enjoyed it. It's been a crazy year and a lot of luck in terms of have you had the players which have been cancelled or not, and I think that's made a big difference to a lot of teams. But in terms of my Telegraph team, I think I've been rising at the fastest rate out of anybody within the three of us, because I've moved from the dunces class from about 10,000 and I'm now within the top 1,000. So I've sort of like moved up the classes, still behind the top boys, but at least you're now in sight.
Well done, Carl. Yeah, I had a quick look in the mini league. It's not something I probably consciously do enough in Telegraph, obviously because we only pod every kind of quarter or so. I'm always looking at my kind of Sky ranks and FPL ranks, obviously, because I podcast every week on those. With Telegraph, I don't tend to really look, and I thought I was doing really well until I looked literally right behind me, and you were both there looking up at me like, woo! So it's going to be a really, really exciting second half of the season. We will look at our teams next. So for our watchers on YouTube, if you haven't subscribed to us yet, please press the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner of the screen to ensure you don't miss anything on this channel. We also cover Sky Fantasy Football on the channel as well. Also, please press the like button if you enjoy our content. So for this podcast, we'll firstly look at our teams and progress before looking at the top scoring new bonus points beneficiaries so far this season. So as we all know, new bonus points this year for goalkeepers and midfielders. We'll take a look at the season's best players so far, the best value players so far, and where we should be looking to spend our budget going forward to maximise the bang for our buck. We'll then look at the fixtures for the next 10 game weeks, what we know about the FA Cup, the World Club Cup, and how that could affect our picks, which players we fancy going forward, average transfers remaining, which you haven't seen now, Telegraph every week. So I write an article for the Telegraph every single week online, and it includes average transfers remaining. So if you are an avid player, check that out every single week. It's really interesting, and I'll reveal the latest ones a bit later on in this pod. We have lots of questions to answer. Thank you so much for everyone who joined in and asked lots of questions on Twitter and WhatsApp and email, and we'll then finish off having another quick look again at our teams, because what I find, I don't know about you guys, but my thoughts now this minute will very likely change in a couple of hours by the time we get to our teams again, and we could get a bit of a plan in place. So lots to talk about. And firstly then, let's look at Carl's team. So Carl, what is your rank? And if you don't mind disclosing how many transfers you have left.
Okay. Well, on the screen you've got my team, and I put in my points and my ranks by over the previous one. So in the first time we had the podcast of 16,000, then 9,500, and now I'm 692. in terms of position wise. Hence what I was saying about the velocity of my team going upwards.
Yeah.
And my transfers now, I've used 22, so I've only got 18 left. I was in a much better position in terms of transfers, but I must admit, I do get a little bit greedy. I mean, I saw, as you may see by my team, so I had a beautiful structure previously in terms of I had a 5-3-2, more Man City and Chelsea defenders, but I've sort of like switched because when West Ham had their double game week and a couple of Everton players, and that's not the end of the world. So for the audio listeners, I'll just go through my team. I'm at a very unusual 3-4-3 formation. I got De Gea in goal. I'm quite content with that. At the back, my mainstays has been TAA and Cancelo, and I've got Corfu from West Ham as my third defender. And in midfield, it's right hodgepodge. I've got Decore of Everton, who's now injured. I've got Bowen Gray of Everton, who was brought in for the double, which one got postponed, I think. And is that Lanzarini of West Ham. And up front, I've got Ronaldo, Antonio, Lukaku. So injuries, World Cup, I have some transfers to make, but that's fine. And I'm sure that we'll sort of touch on who may be moving around, but quite a lot of them will be gone come mid-February.
Yeah. It looks like you've definitely attacked the FA Cup there, Carl.
Yeah, well, it wasn't FA Cup; it was a double game fixtures. And it was the FA Cup. Hence, that's when I put in Luca. Okay. But it will soon be the Valentine massacre on that squad.
Brilliant. Yeah, same. I've been looking at mine, and well, let's look at Luke's first. Luke, we've got your team on screen. Do you want to run through it for our audio listeners and give us the goss?
So I'm pretty settled with my team. I've got 2 heavy hitting players, and the rest are pretty much set, really. So I think that I'm just going to be rotating around the big players, trying to get 3-for-1s and stuff with 2. But so I've got Ramsdale in goal, ridiculous price. Like, I know that Arsenal have probably got less fixtures than some of the other teams, but save points, like even if they've got tough teams now, so cheap, so ridiculous. So I think bar like some stupid 5-for-1 or something on a goalkeeper, I think he's just sitting there for the rest of the season.
Wow.
Bar maybe the FA Cup, if there's an obvious team where I can, but it's going to take a lot to move him on. I've got Cancelo, who I think will sit there for the season. I've got Laporte, who will probably sit there for the season, and then I've got TAA, who I can swap to any other defender. So if I want to, and he can, I've only got 3 at the back, which is rare for me.
Yeah.
But I'll come on to the reason why in a minute. I've then got Bowen and Gallagher. So your shout on Bowen on the last pod, Fergie, absolutely stonking round of applause. I'm pleased to say my shout at Kane, it was horrible for a few weeks, and then suddenly he's hit a bit of form. So thank God he's turned up now, because otherwise this could have been very embarrassing. Ooh, that wildcard shout of Harry Kane, and it's terrible. But yeah, so I've got Bowen and Gallagher, and I recently bought Rafinha back because I think that from memory I got a 3-for-1 on. I can't remember who I took out, but I got a 3-for-1 for them. And then I've got De Bruyne, who I moved Salah to pre-African Nations Cup. He's done pretty good. He's been ticking along nicely. The reason I've only got 3 at the back is because I've got Dennis in there, who's been very nice, even though I think he's suspended for the next game. He's going to, I think, just at that price, it's stupid. And there isn't a defender that I fancy at whatever it is, 2.4, 2.3.
Yeah.
And then I've got Kane, and I've just brought Jota back in for Antonio to get the extra game, and thankfully he got an assist, so that was quite good. So Jota, I think I'll keep for the foreseeable. So basically, I'm going to be swapping Kane and De Bruyne and maybe TAA, but those 3 places, I think the rest of the team is pretty much set for the rest of the season, bar, like I say, 4-for-1s or 5-for-1s, I think.
If we can change your mind on Ramsdale in a little bit.
Oh, I always do.
When we look at the fixtures, we'll have a look at that one. But pretty solid.
But I've got 19 transfers as well. So I've got.
Ooh, I thought you had more than that.
Oh, my other team's got more, which is doing better.
Oh,
which
swine.
Is nice. So, but yeah, but I've got 19 transfers, and bar Kane to Salah, I don't want to make any transfers. So
that's a nice looking
like,
team.
I'm quite happy with that.
Very nice looking team. Good stuff, gents. You're absolutely flying. Got my team now on screen. I'm on a 5-3-2 at the moment. I have been kind of messing around with different formations. I was doing very well with transfers. I had 28 left on New Year's Day, which is a new record for me. And I think I was about ranked, I want to say about 500 or 600th. So I was in a really, really good spot. And I decided to attack a little bit. Some of them have worked. Some haven't really worked. I did do Ramsdale to De Gea. Because obviously Ramsdale, I think an Arsenal game or two was canned on it, and then De Gea had like a 3-for-1 over him or whatever else. And as the fixtures have actually fallen now with the extra FA Cup games and the extra fixture that's been put in a couple of weeks' time, I think De Gea's got like a 6-for-2 over Ramsdale, but I will look at that later. So I'm quite happy. Luke's ears pricked up then, as I saw. I've still got 2 Chelsea defenders, which I'll explain now. So I've still got Rudiger and Alonso, and I've got Trent, Cancelo, and Laporte. I brought Laporte in for Dennis after his red card. I was furious with that red card. It was I brought in Dennis for the just for the value of the run of games. I don't even think he scored a goal for me. I bought him a bit too late, but obviously he had his red. They're out of the FA Cup, and he's banned for the next game. So that for me was a bit of a. And I wanted Laporte anyway, so that's the back 5. I've got Gallagher and Bowen. And probably the first mistake I think I've made in a while was I brought in Saka for the FA Cup game against Nottingham Forest. Obviously not knowing that they would lose. And be knocked out of the cup, but also not knowing at that time that a game or 2 of theirs would be cancelled as well. So that was a bit of a boo-boo on my part. I rushed it. And up front at the moment, I've got Antonio and Ronaldo. And I think I've been quite lucky with Ronaldo, just in terms of, again, they've got the extra fixtures. So United have got 6 fixtures coming up to everyone else's 5, 4, 3, and even 2 in certain cases. But the reason I've held on to Rudiger and Alonso is because they can keep a clean sheet against anyone, as they proved in last game against Spurs. But they do play very early this coming FA Cup weekend. They play at 12:30 on the Saturday at home to Plymouth. Now, I think, I don't know if both of them will play. I expect one of them to play. And then they shoot off then to the World Club Cup. But I thought if I can grab a clean sheet or 2 before they go, I just get as much information as possible before they go. Stop shaking your head, Luke.
It's my team, mate. Ain't got a chance, have they, Chelsea?
Rubbish. Oh, of course, it's Plymouth, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I didn't think of that actually.
Haven't got a chance.
But I'll take the appearance points then at the very least, and have a bit of a reshuffle, because I know I'm going to want probably Jota, Salah back. I haven't really got the funds, but my current plan at the moment is roughly Rudiger, Alonso, and Saka. I've got a bit of money in the bank to Jota, Salah, but then I've only got 2.1 left, so I need to have a little think of kind of what I do there. I want to hold on to Bowen and Antonio, especially both of them, right? Both West Ham's next games, they're away to Kidderminster in the FA Cup, who are non-league, and then they follow that up straight away 3 days later. They're home to Watford, which are probably the 2 best fixtures you could ever imagine for West Ham at the moment. And even after that, their fixtures are pretty decent. But yeah, so my team I was being very, very cautious. I attacked January a little bit, and now I'm ready to transition into February, is my current team. But as Luke said, players like Gallagher, Cancelo, Trent, Laporte, probably De Gea, Bowen, they're probably not going to move from my team for months, if at all.
How many transfers you got then?
So in this team, I think I've got 21 now. So it's not amazing, but it's pretty good. I'm going to use 3 or 4 going into February. So I'll go into February with a very, very optimal team with about 17 or 18 left, which I think is a nice place to be. You go, Luke. How many you got?
Me? No, yeah. I said I've got 19.
No, in your other team.
My other team, 22.
Oh, that's not too bad then.
So
that's okay.
But it's the exact same team I've got on the other one.
Ah, okay.
So,
all right.
So I don't quite know how it ended up like that, but yeah, it's a nice position to be.
It is. It's a lovely team. And
yeah, I hadn't spotted the match. Well, I know they got the fixture rearranged a couple of days ago, but I hadn't spotted the United, so I could do that big transfer there. I've got 1.6 million in the bank for both teams, so I can pretty much get anyone I want. But yeah, interesting. So I'm looking at yours. You definitely need to move the Chelsea boys on because they don't play for so long.
No, definitely.
So I'm quite happy with that because I'm thinking you've got 3-4 transfers needed there.
Yeah. I've got at least 3, but I may actually have to make 4 if I definitely want Salah back. But what I've been doing this season, what I haven't done in previous seasons, I've been waiting till, because obviously Rudiger and Alonso haven't been good picks for a long time, have they? But I've just been holding on, trying to get as much information as possible. And what I find sometimes is when you hold on for that long, players' form sometimes changes, or fixtures get rearranged, or kind of whatever it is.
I'll tell you the funny thing about my second team. So all the COVID stuff and all the fixture rearranges, I was sort of feeling like I had to tack them because I was up to about 120th in my first team at one point, and my other team was down at about 3,500, and I just left it early to mid-November, literally didn't touch it. And then, similar to you, I don't check the mini leagues often.
No, I don't.
And then I just logged on and went, hang on, how is that team above my other team? And I looked at the transfers left. I had 32 transfers left. And I was like, it'd gone from sort of 4,000 up to, I don't know, about 400 in like 8-9 weeks, literally not touching it. So it's pure luck on that, but it also shows sometimes just leaving your team, which we always preach.
If you've got a rock solid team, if you've got a solid team, just let the points roll in. And even if a player doesn't, like Gallagher, I know some managers who took out Gallagher, when he went through that spell of not doing anything for like the 3 or 4 games, but he's just a season keeper. You just leave him, and he will score points. And I think the big difference, what I've done with this season to other seasons, is I've not tried to be too intricate with my transfers as such. I've moved my team. I've transitioned my team by using 2 or 3 at one time, changing the dynamic of my team to set it up for the next month, and then just leaving it, and then doing the same again and doing the same again. Apart from the FA Cup where I brought Lukaku in and out as well, Carl. You don't have to worry about that and all that jazz. But other than those little pain points, I'm just gonna now I'll make 3 or 4 transfers now, but my team will be optimal for February. In the February I'll do the same again for March, and it seems to be working pretty well.
I mean, I think the really interesting thing, and particularly looking at your team as well, Carl, is all 3 of our teams are completely different.
They are.
Like mad, this stage, normally, like this time last year, all 3 of our teams. Well, I think Carl's was a bit maverick this time last year, but it's mad that all 3 of our teams are pretty much within a couple of hundred of each other. It's probably only 20 points between us, and they're all really 5 or 6 same players, but then there's 5 or 6 players that are completely different and pretty much all different formations. So it's a funny season.
It is a funny season. And sorry, go on.
Well, no, it's just they are all different, but there's a common theme, especially between your two, is the solidness of the defence. And I quite like Fergie's one where, and this was mine, which shot me up the ranks of the big teams. It's Man City. I can't remember if I had 2. I think I had 2 or 3 Man City and 2 Chelsea and TAA, and that just over time they were bringing points because you're not looking for the goals. Alonso, I was never sure enough in keeping this place, but apart from that, you can sort of say, oh, look at those fixtures. But in terms of Lukaku and you sort of like taking him out, I had thought of that, but when I saw the draw against Plymouth, being because I was going to move to Kane, and I thought, oh, they're playing Plymouth at 12:30, and then he can move to Kane on the FA Cup day.
No, that's fair enough as well.
That's that's just the way it is.
It's going to be horrendous for me. I think,
just moved him on
in all reality. But
I just moved Lukaku on because he's just looked god awful. I know, he doesn't look like scoring anything, does he? He hasn't looked good. But but it's it's a really good fixture against Plymouth. But I think the good thing with Telegraph, which is obviously different from the other games, is it's because no captaincies. Even if he does bang, even if he gets 2 goals and assists, which I think the form they're in is very unlikely. 15 points isn't going to destroy your season, especially at his ownership level. So I'm quite happy to move him on. Whereas on Sky, be a bit more reserved, I think.
Yeah.
As you know, Carl, because you're the best out of all of us at Sky. So, but yeah, let's have a look then. So we've got the data up now. So these are total saves made. So as we know, the change was made, and it's I think it's had a massive impact on the game, and I'm really enjoying it because I think it definitely brings keeper, like Ramsdale, Meslier, maybe Fabianski into the game. De Gea, for me, has probably been the surprise one in terms of that he's had to make the most saves this season because United's defence are so dire, but he's had to make 87 saves, which is just incredible. So what that kind of averages out at over 40 points extra with the clean sheets, on top as well, even though they haven't had many. But I brought in De Gea because I didn't have him. I had Ramsdale, and I noticed like loads of managers around me had De Gea. They were scoring 4 or 5 points every game, even when he wasn't keeping clean sheets. I was getting a bit bored of it, so I made the change when the fixtures said. But we'll look at the fixtures in a bit. But Ramsdale was an absolute superstar as well. He was knocking in kind of 9 or 10 pointers regularly, wasn't he, over kind of November and December. It's dried up a bit now.
Did you boys? I saw an amazing graphic. I think it was somebody shared it from The Athletic around all of the keepers around the whole of the European league. So I think the top 5 or 6 leagues, and De Gea was like so far ahead of any other keeper, and this includes all the bad keepers bad keepers for bad teams. And his his save percentage was just be off the charts compared to pretty much every other keeper. It's bonkers. Like United without him this season would be probably relegation contenders, I think. And it's crazy.
It's not even like, he's just making kind of long shot saves. He's making match winning point blank saves. They're absolutely incredible. He's so good. What's your take on the keepers this year, Carl? Do you think it's changed the game a little bit?
It's changed the game a little bit. I was surprised when I saw that graph that De Gea was so far ahead. And I do think it makes the game more interesting. And Ramsdale, I was on the same as him as everyone else, and I think it was postponed games, COVID or whatever, and Man United having a double. I went to De Gea, and I'm keeping him much more now because they're in the cup, and he actually played in the cup as well.
He did. So it's very surprising, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that sort of like makes a difference because quite often you have your rotation keeper. But it's like everything. I really do like the changes, but I can't remember if they made the changes after they'd already fixed the price points of the players, because the expensive keepers are too much considering they just getting clean sheets and they don't get many saves. But I'm sure we may come on to that a bit later on. But yeah, we've sort of said that stuff before as well.
Yeah. Moving forward, I think I'm going to be really interested in Mendy for Chelsea. Obviously, when Chelsea's World Club Cup and everything else is all done and dusted, and the Carabao Cup final again, which we'll touch on in a bit, Chelsea are going to have a lot of very, very good fixtures in a very short space of time at the end of the season. So
they won't be in the FA Cup after this weekend, though.
Well, that's fair enough. They may not be in the FA Cup with the mighty Plymouth to them, but I think that's going to be my long-term move, is De Gea to Mendy in around a month's time is kind of what I'm looking at.
I don't think that they will have that many extra games because they had their Brighton game brought forward, so they're
that's a good point.
At least they're one game ahead of everybody else, and in previous years they have Kepa and goal for the cup games. So even if they progress in the cup, so I would keep with De Gea.
Good point.
And then until there's a point in time where you think, oh, now I've seen a better opportunity. It may be Mendy because it's a good team, but he may not save that many shots. If I was going to go, and if all matches were even, Ramsdale is the bee's knees, cheap.
Yeah.
goodish side, top four side, pushing for top four and make saves. So he's the better keeper, I think. Or I'm sure we come to the Wolves players and Sarr.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, that's the next one I expect.
I think as well, a lot will be cost dependent on how our team's looking at the time, because obviously, if Salah, Kane, Ronaldo and De Bruyne are all banging in goals every single week, it means we may have to go to Ramsdale, out of necessity, for example. Whereas if a couple of premiums get injured, or a couple of, Dennis and Brosher at 2.4, start doing it, we get the pick then, don't we? But yeah, you're right, Carl. It's kind of at the time something will kind of naturally emerge, won't it? I think, but yeah, no, it's a really good point. And looking at the tackles as well now, Christian Norgard for Brentford, who's a bit of a legend in Sky, 72 tackles over the season, which equates to, what's that, about 35, 36 points over the season. Stuart Dallas second on 68, and then we go down to John McGinn and Rodri on 52. Alan, Bissouma, Gallagher, absolute legend Conor Gallagher, Carl, my goodness. Fred, McNeil, Sergi Canos, Declan Rice, etc., etc. I don't think this has maybe had as much as an impact, obviously, because there are players like Bowen, for example, at 3.9, who you're very likely going to pick ahead a lot of these players. And obviously Gallagher is an absolute kind of stick in our teams. Rafinha, who Lucas had, has been a really good pick as well. But come to you first, Carl. What do you think on the kind of changes? Has it impacted the picks for your team?
Yeah, I think very much so. And it's not more the top two that you read out. Obviously, like Dallas was a man from Leeds last season in the Sky, and I think he was down as a defender. But I think we sort of talked about at the beginning of the season. You get those cheap enablers. The problem, it's not the problem with the graph, but some of these players have missed quite a bit. So Alan, I think, has been injured. So, but he's at like 2.9, and that just makes him so much better value for money. And Bissouma of Brighton, he's missed a lot of games for a period of time. So it's just, and at that price, it enables you to get somebody in who ticks over fantastically for the season and frees that money for you to spend elsewhere. And it does bring in those type of players. And well, Rodri, I think, is too expensive there for this game, but it does make other players much more of an option, which I think is fantastic. The more players that are realistic options, the better it makes the game and more diverse you become.
Completely agree. And what's your take on the tackling midfielders, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great because there's more points, but Conor Gallagher has broken the game.
Yeah, you're right.
As has Dennis. Because if you've got those two, then basically you've got enough budget for 4 premium defenders, 3 decent midfielders, and 2 good strikers. So I think if Conor Gallagher wasn't there, because he's got the goals as well as all of these tackles, I think if you go down the rest of that list, I mean, I'm just trying to read it now. I mean, bar maybe Rodri, just because of the team he's in, he gets his share of goals, but they're really intermittent. There's nobody there where you fancy, well, Silva right at the bottom, but he's 5.4, so I don't think he quite counts as budget. But so it's good, and I think in any normal season, sort of Alan or Bissouma, which I think we were all I started with Bissouma, and I know you were shouting Gallagher at the start of the season, Carl, as well, so it's another top shout. But it was kind of, okay, we know who they're going to be. But the enabler this season, because of Gallagher and because of Dennis, I just don't think I'm focused on those tackles, because I think there's better points for people like, but just 500,000 more, and you get Bowen rather than Stuart. Well, it's Dallas playing that now, but McGinn versus Rafinha, or McGinn versus sort of Bowen, it's no contest, is it? So I think if it wasn't for Gallagher, who's broken the game, I think, that I'd be really interested in loads of the Norgard in Sky. Like you say, I didn't jump on him, and I think that's a big part of the reason I dropped off in Sky, because he was just picking up 2-3 extra points every week. And so, but I really like the addition. I love the fact we've got saves and the tackles in now. I think it's made it a better game, actually.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's other players who've helped the season, I think. And I think we said this actually right at the start of the season, but Rudiger at 3.9 and Reece James, I'm sorry, Rudiger at 3.8, Reece James at 3.9 were just absolutely criminally underpriced. And I was quite fortunate that I got a Reece James quite early. He got injured, he came back, he got a red card, but I was determined in the first half of the season just to stick with my team because I was convinced he was a good pick. And obviously then, like November, he absolutely flew, didn't he? He was scoring goals and clean sheets. So they were, if you had, I had James, Rudiger, Ramsdale, and Gallagher, Jota and Bowen. Like, they're all so massively underpriced in the game, aren't they? And, as you say, it's made it much, much easier then to actually be able to afford who you want. But yeah, I think it's been a great addition. I probably haven't. I focused on it at the start. I picked Basuma in my starting team, and then I had Gallagher as well. But I think when Bowen emerged, Jota, Reece James, all these kind of players, they're obviously probably better TFF assets because they got more point potential. But no, I think it's it's a fantastic addition, and if those other players were priced properly, I think they'd be more prominent. So, but yeah, let's have a look then at the top point scorers so far in the game. Thank you so much, Carl, for pulling all this together for us. I'll just run through the top point scorers in each position so far. So we haven't mentioned him yet, but Ederson is actually the top keeper with 111 points, but he is quite expensive at 4.7 million. De Gea is second with the keeper at 109. Jose Sarr, 3.1, 108. I mean, what's going on there? That is just... they're just keeping clean sheet after clean sheet, aren't they? They're absolutely unbelievable. Amazing value. Ramsdale, the same. 99 points are just 2.8 million. And then we come on to Mendy and Alisson. In terms of defenders, Cancelo top and Trent second. I mean, can we expect anything else? They're just two absolute superstars of the game. Cancelo also, for me, massively underpriced. I brought him in quite early, maybe October time, and I was shocked to see he was only 4.5 million. I thought it'd be like 5+, but he is just an absolute darling of the game. Trent, Diaz, Laporte, Van Dijk, and then Rudiger, and then the Wolves defenders again, Carl, which I know you want to touch on. Cody and Kilman. In midfield, Salah is top of the whole game by an absolute mile, with 150 points, and second is Bowen. As you mentioned, we kind of shouted out last time. 127 points, the joint second top scorer in the game with Cancelo. Bernardo Silva, for me, quite interestingly, has gone under the radar a little bit for me. He's quite expensive. I know he's he scored a couple of goals, he got a few assists, but we saw him on the tackles as well, didn't he? So he's got quite a few tackle points, which I think helped go under the radar, though he is very expensive at 5.4. Gallagher 107, and Mason Mount is probably for me another one who's gone kind of slightly under the radar, I think. And then strikers, Antonio, no premium strikers in the top 4 point scorers. Antonio top with 100 points, went off like a train, stopped a bit obviously since then, but does have nice fixtures coming up. Jota second, who we also called out in the last pod, 4.7 million, ridiculous value. Dennis, third top point scorer with 86, just 2.6 million. That is absolutely unbelievable. And then fourth is Mopai, who is ahead of Cristiano Ronaldo. He's also ahead of Harry Kane, Jamie Vardy, Romelu Lukaku, and everyone else you want to say as well. So incredible up front. And I'm sure Carl has got plenty to say about where we should be spending our cash this season.
Well, I'll probably just repeat what I sort of said last time. The one thing I'll mention is we talked about if you get players who have broken the game as such. But there's other players who've broken the game in the other way, like all the forwards, the premium forwards, they just haven't performed at all. Whether that will continue, whether it will change, I don't know. Where I would the message for this game has stayed consistent through the year, and there's some slides later on I'm sure we'll come to, is mainly spending your money in defence, getting those premium players from the top teams, and then in midfield and up front, as the list Fergie sort of read out, it's you can go as cheap as chips because they're performing better than the caviar. However, I will wish to mention, because you mentioned Dennis a few times, I'm not sure if he may get nerfed by their new manager. So obviously they've got Roy Hodgson in. And I remember when he came to Palace, because he played at Liverpool, the comment to Palace fans was he plays turgid football. It's a bit unfair, but I can understand what he means. What he means is he drills his side to become very solid. And I expect there'll be less attacking opportunities for the Watford players because they'll be much more focused on, as soon as you lose the ball, come back into your own half, and therefore they won't get the men forward. And I would, if you haven't got him, I wouldn't be in a hurry to get them. A, they're outside the FA Cup, so you're going to have less games. And secondly, because they've had a completely different manager coming in who may be successful in terms of grinding out some wins, but for your fantasy attacking assets, they may lower. So I'd be very careful on the Watford players.
What do you think of that, Carl?
They would tend to weekend.
Sorry, no, I actually agree with you, Carl. That's the reason I took him out last week was most of the point you said actually. What do you think, Luke?
I don't disagree that well, let's be quite frank, they haven't kept a clean sheet all season. I think I read the other day, which is
listen
ridiculous.
To this for a stat. I don't know if you've heard this one. Watford have had 6 managers since they last kept a clean sheet. Is a stat I saw in the week, which I assume is true. Which is, if that's right, I can that be right?
No, they go through a manager every 4 weeks or something.
It's madness,
so
isn't it?
Could easily be.
No, maybe it's the last time they've kept a clean sheet in the.
In the Premier League, maybe.
In the Premier League.
It might be in the Premier League. Yeah, you might be right.
I think they beat Palace 1-0 in the League Cup, and then obviously you'd have expected them to have some in the Championship.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I'm going to put and it's partly because I've got him, I guess. But I was just looking back over our teams, and despite what me and Carl constantly preach, which is the best value is 5 at the back, and don't invest in forwards, we've both got 3 forwards at the moment.
Yeah, no.
Now, if you're going to play 5-4-1 or 4-5-1, and you've got Dennis as your striker, it doesn't really matter if he does 2 points or even 1 point per game at that price, because then you've got Salah, KDB, you've got the 5 premium defenders, whoever they are at the time. You can probably afford, I'm trying to think who else, you take Bowen and you take Gallagher, and you've probably then got 5 mil in the bank or something.
Yeah.
But, so I think there is an argument that and I'm going to be interested in Carl's optimal team in a bit, because I think the forwards are, and I think you guys will confirm this, but I consistently say the forwards are overpriced in TFF. They're always $1 million or $2 million over where they should be. So given that you've got a forward that's the same price as the best value budget defenders, performing basically at the same rate as them, that's why I think it's breaking the game. I mean, if they're going to price the forwards like that, then no forward should be under 3.5 really, if you're going to be consistent, or just lower the 7 millions to 6 million and make them viable again. So I think the argument, and I do agree with you. I mean, I wouldn't bring him in, definitely not. But if you've got him, and you are thinking, hey, where do I invest my money? Well, the best money is in defence and midfield, as always. So keep Dennis and just get every premium player you can get, because you can probably afford 10 premiums and have Dennis up front as you want. So that I guess is a slight argument for it. But obviously, if he gets dropped, then maybe that isn't such good advice. But you've got the what's his name, Bordia or whatever his name, at
Rocha Southampton. I'm quite
2.4.
interested in him. I think he might be a better option.
Well, but that's the beauty, is if you do go down that route of you've got Dennis and he gets dropped, well, actually you say 0.2 and you've got somebody who is a starter for a team that's arguably a better team. So again, another game breaker there. Well done on the pricing, boys, this year.
Yeah, well, definitely. Carl, you mentioned Wolves earlier, Sarr and Kilman and stuff. Do you think that they could, obviously they've been amazing value. They've probably been largely overlooked, obviously, because they're just not a trendy defensive team to maybe choose your players from. But do you think they can keep it going? And are you considering any of their players for your team moving forward?
I am considering their players. The defenders are extremely cheap.
Yeah.
If you move on to the next slide, which is the slide I tend to look at once. I don't know if you want to. So the top points per million per game. This is when you can sort out or try to identify the cheap enablers very quickly. And on keepers, Sarr is second behind Ramsdale. I don't know if he played in the FA Cup. That's a question mark. But in the defenders, you've got Al Neni or whatever he's called.
Ain't Nori. El Neni plays for Arsenal.
Sorry. Maybe I should put my glasses on when I try to read.
No, you're okay. Ain't Nori anyway, for Wolves, yeah.
Yeah, so he's like near enough one of the top players on that metric. And then you've got Marcel of Wolves, and then you've got Kilman, 2.4, 2.5, 2.7, scoring great. If you need, and this is, if you need the money, which I will do, so I've been checking what I'm going to transition to, I will be bringing in probably Kilman, maybe Cody, Kilman. So I'll bring in one of them for a period of time. They're still in the FA Cup, and they got a home game, I think, to Norwich, so you'd hope they'd win it. For at least the short term, I will be bringing them in to help me transition for the longer term. And they've looked extremely solid. When you see them play, I think they've only conceded 2 goals twice all year, something ridiculous. Never been hammered, so they've looked really, really good.
Can I just point something out though? I seem to remember on the first pre-season pod of this season, Fergie ribbing me. What the hell you got Ben White in your team for?
No, that's fair. That's fair enough.
Look at the guy who's got the best points per million there. He's sort of quietly ticked along.
He didn't until about November. Then they picked up, didn't they? But no, I can't.
If you pick and stick, don't waste transfers.
No, I can't argue there.
Just got to say it. I've got to have something.
No,
I was going to win Sky this season. You won Dream Team. I have something. Give me something.
I was thinking of that a couple of weeks ago, actually, when he kept another clean sheet. I was like, oh, and there was me going, you don't want him. But no, he has been. He's been very, very good. I got to be fair. Who else kind of jumps out there? If you chat, obviously Sanchez started off well in goals for Brighton, but they seem to have dropped off a little bit, though they do have, I think they blank next week, don't they? Then they've got a couple of doubles and stuff. Just looking down the list, Chalobah for Chelsea, obviously he's kind of in and out with the team. Gabriel for Arsenal at 3 million as well has been really, really good, both in terms of points and value. And the most expensive player, or there's 2 in that whole list of top 20 defenders, Laporte and Cancelo are in there in terms of value for money as well, which just shows how cheap they are, don't it?
Yeah, the Arsenal players that you mentioned are good value for money, but their fixture list is bumpy at best. in the sense that they already ate the FA Cup, so they won't be playing this week, and in a couple of weeks they won't be playing. And they also have a blank when Liverpool play in the League Cup final.
Yeah.
And they're also meant to be playing Chelsea, so that could be also another blank in the short term. So even though you could say they may be good players, at this stage of the season, I wouldn't be looking to bring them in. Maybe later on in the season, when after the League Cup, and they may have extra games to make up, that could be a possibility. But good players, but not for this period of the year.
Really good. Was a really good point. And here you are, Luke. I'll big you up here as well on Livramento. So in the last pod, I was waxing lyrical about how Livramento had been amazing for me, and he'd transformed my season. I think you said, "Yep, he's good." And Carl, I think both said it as well. They said moving forward, I think both of you basically said you've got the points and move on. And I think
Carl said that.
It was Carl. There you are,
I'm
Luke.
pretty sure I was shouting keep him. But then, to be fair, I think he was the guy I moved over to Dennis, and then Dennis went on again because I got a 2-for-1.
So I moved Livramento on the following week, and it worked out a treat. So thank you, Carl, by the sound of it, who told me to move him on.
Yeah, see, I reckon you knew that Luke obviously.
So you had to actually admit it.
Bloke, so we'll admit to being an idiot again on that front. No.
But can I just sort of say, going down the list, a name that sort of jumped out on me on the midfielders was Ramsey.
I was just looking at him.
And it's like, well, problem is they've been knocked out of the FA Cup already. And Aston Villa have bought Coutinho. They got Bendua, whatever from Argentina chap, and they've got. I don't know how secure his place would be, so I won't be bringing him in myself. But is that 2.2 million?
It is 2.2 million.
It's like cheap as chips.
Like
and have you seen the plays? Yeah, it is. It's like fantastic value. But I won't be bringing him in myself, but he's a name that did catch my eye. Going, oh wow, I know him. Well, I don't, but you know what I mean. And the one that you've already mentioned from Southampton, is that the second one down? Borja, whatever he's called.
Yeah, Borja. Yeah, the striker. Yeah.
Fantastic. What do you want? Nothing. He's ready. He's got everything.
Yeah.
From what I see. Wow. Anyway, so those are the other couple of names that sort of like jumped out at me, and I think, could be moving there.
Well, Ramsey, according to Adam Hopcroft, who is a season ticket holder, hub contributor, we'll do the Green Arrow with, for those who don't know, says that Ramsey is in their best 11, and he expects him to play the vast majority of the game. So you are stuck for funds. He could be. I did notice he's on 61 points, which is. It's quite a lot. I don't think he was on the tackle list. So, but yeah, he's definitely an interesting one, and I agree. I think another one maybe I'm interested in when they come back again from the World Club Cup. If you remember, Kovacic at the start of the season at 3.3 was flying, and he pulled his hamstring, didn't he? But he was doing really well. And Rafinha, Luke, I'll finally give you some credit. Rafinha, you did mention him at the start and midway through. He wasn't for me, but he has been sensational, and I think he's been really good value for money, and I expect him to carry on actually, because he's just turned into I'm not sure I could go as far as world class, but he's definitely been one of the stars of the Premier League this season. I think it's fair to say. Martinelli, another one, 3.6 midfield again, Carl. I completely agree with you. Not now. But when Arsenal have their run at the end of the season, a 3.6 midfielder, someone playing, kind of in that Mane role as a left forward, 3.6, he could be, amazing value. And Salah, the most expensive player in the game, is in this value list as well, because he's just scored so many points. We've got a question actually of someone on Twitter saying, I'm sure it's tongue in cheek, but he said, "Is Salah a trap?" And I was like, "No, it's just
biggest trap ever.
The biggest trap ever." But so some really good options there, and it kind of all there's some really really good value options there, aren't there? And I think we're all saying again, as we do kind of time after time, is that just get one or two of these maybe in your team, put the money at the back in the main into defence. Obviously, at this point, when there's FA Cup games, I was tempted by Lukaku as well, Carl. So Chelsea were home to Chesterfield, I think, and who were non-league. They put out a really strong team. He missed 2 massive chances before he scored his goal, and then they brought him off at half-time, which was an absolute sickener. But I think it was the fact that he played at 12:30 the following week as well. I kind of looked and thought, it's worth a punt, because that's hat-trick material, right? And obviously didn't quite materialise as that. But I think when the teams settle down now, hopefully with the new COVID rules, where I think from now a team has to prove 4 cases for a game to be postponed. That'll probably likely be the end of the postponements, or at least the vast majority of them. I think we'll start to see a schedule again, which we can plan around properly, get our teams set straight again, because all these games called off have just been, I think personally I've been quite fortunate with my team. I've managed to avoid a fair bit of it, but I know a lot haven't. So I think it'll. You go, Luke. Sorry.
No, don't get me started on these fake postponements. It's utter. They've all got squads of like 90 people who are top draw players, and then they can't play the game. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like Plymouth were like, we'll have your bottom 25, and we'll have your squad like happily. It's ridiculous that they won't play these games. Sorry, but like.
No, I can't. Yeah. I can't argue there. Carl, your next slide, talks about this kind of very thing, right? About where we should spend our cash, and it looks quite clear to me. As usual, defence is the way to go. You just want to talk us through this?
Yeah. So the chart itself, I've got it for the 3 outfield positions, and I've juiced another one for the goalkeepers. I just have a scatter plot of all the players who've scored, played in at least 10 matches, how many points they score on average per match against their actual cost.
Yeah. And
then you can sort of like plot them all, and you can do like a best line of fit, even though it's not the best lines. And then in the final graph, you put all those lines together, and it just gives you broad indication of what formation you should be having by the height of the line, and the gradient shows you the steeper the gradient, the more money you should be putting into that position. So the defenders sort of go up the steepest, and hence that means once you've got your defenders, and it is 5 defenders, I think, you should be going for the more expensive ones. Not always, but that's the thing you should do. And then it's midfield, and then at the very end you've got near enough a flat line for forwards, which near enough what we talked about before. It doesn't really matter how much you spend on your forwards; they're all just as good as each other. Sort of in terms of fantasy points, not in terms of real life ability. And you do get outliers on the graphs, like Salah, even though he's very expensive as a midfielder, his data point is much higher above the line. So you can sort of see even individual players, which ones are above the line. So don't stick rigidly to this, but it just gives a broad indication, and that's what we sort of talked about a little bit before.
Superb, Carl. Thank you. And we're just going to have a quick look now at points per game per million. I've taken this off, so it's going on a little bit from what we mentioned earlier, but it's looking at the last 10 game weeks alone. Sarr is top, Kilman second, Gallagher, Ramsdale, Jacob Ramsey, Semedo, Sanchez, Cody, De Gea, Brosher, Laporte and Bowen. They're kind of the top 10 or 12 value players in the last 10 or 12 game weeks, followed by this is for again total of all players. This is for all season. Gallagher is the top value player of the season so far. If you don't have Gallagher still in your team, it's probably worth getting him in still, because he's such amazing value. Ramsdale is second. Wouldn't get Ramsdale yet, as Carl alluded to earlier. Their fixtures are quite tough for a while. Excuse me, Jen. I just need to cough. but no doubt later on he'll be incredible value again. Aït-Nouri, Marsal, Dennis, Chalobah, Sarr, Gabriel, Kilman, Davinson Sanchez, quite interesting. But these are the players you want to look at in terms of maybe, obviously you need to apply your own layer of discretion onto this in terms of fixtures, if you think they're nailed in the team, all that sort of stuff as well. But, it just gives some hints really on, who the best value players in the game are. Obviously, you're not going to want to have Aït-Nouri and Marsal because they take the same spot. But if one of them nails down that left-hand spot at Wolves, and Wolves continue to look solid, whichever it is, will should continue to provide amazing value. We then move on to your optimal team, Carl.
Thanks for that. Yeah, so I've just had a look at the point score, and I've run it through an optimization to look at if you had the best 11 players for your money, what the team would be. And a lot of these names all sound familiar. I think it's the 5-4-1 formation that we've got. And overall, it scores 1,257 points if you've made no transfers. And that compares to the current leader of the whole thing, who's got 1,263 points. So you're whole 6 points behind, no transfers used, and it put you in third place. The team itself, in goal, would be Sarr from Wolves. And then familiar names in defence, you'd have Laporte, Diaz and Cancelo, with TAA and Rudiger. And then as a midfield, you'd have Salah, Bowen, Bernardo Silva, Gallagher and Antonio up front. I've also produced a team next to that, which would have 1,260 points if you just picked the most point scorers and you didn't have a budget and you'd only have like 3 points more. So that's sort of like similar to what Luke was saying before. You don't need to be really careful with your money because there's so many cheap players in there that you can spend your money on the better players. And a lot of those players, to be honest, you could imagine that defence you picking at the start of the season, and Salah. A lot of those aren't beyond the realms of what you consider reasonable.
Why is it? It's obvious when you look at that back line. Why don't any of us ever do that? Like, always like, I'll find the bargain. Like, why don't we just pick the obvious 5 defenders from the best 2 or 3 teams?
I think it's probably fair to say that, I've certainly had Cancelo, Trent and Rudiger for most of the season. I don't think Laporte was obvious at the start of the season. And I think if Reece James hadn't got injured, he'd probably be in there, as well as I would guess, because he was absolutely flying. But, Diaz, he is expensive. And I think the trade-off is like Diaz against maybe Ronaldo or Kane, and when you see them scoring goals and scoring penalties and all, it's just that I think it's the temptation, but that 5-4-1 once again, as it clearly shows, is just the way to go. And
but a lot of it is with hindsight. This is a hindsight team, and those players, except for maybe Laporte, and at the very beginning of the season, because he didn't really play last year, and it's more Stones that I would have lent towards.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if I had Stones or not. I think I did have Stones at the beginning of the year, and I always thought Stones was going to come in. And then it's like uncertainty to know between the two. And naturally, there's a few cheap midfielders that you'd sort of may not have chosen, which sort of freed up the money. And the premiums, Ronaldo and Kane, they haven't sort of done the business in all honesty compared to others.
Ronaldo having scored less than Dennis, who would have predicted that at the start of the season? With over half the season gone, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
And Kane and Vardy, it's just it's mad. I think moving forward, the second half of the pod obviously will all be about kind of looking forward, but it's the amount of fixtures for me is interesting because I think City have now played 23 games, league games. Okay, they are still in the cup, but that's only 15 league games left. And you've got to think that they're going to likely walk the league. I think they're going to anyway. and what happened last time this happened was they rested quite a few of their star players, around the Champions League quarterfinals and semi-finals. So when we're talking about kind of Diaz against, I'll use Kane as an example. So Spurs have only played 20 games in this, in this FA Cup. So they've got 18 left plus FA Cup. Kane always plays every minute of every game. It's just whether, we can stick to the discipline, stick to the guns, and think that Diaz in those, if he plays all 15 plus FA Cup, which he has been dropped for a couple, dropped or rested for a couple already, against Kane, who if he's fit, he'll play every minute of every game. It's that kind of decision to make, whereas the heart decision always goes with Kane. But every time we do this exercise, the right decision is usually Diaz, isn't it? Is that how you think about it, Carl?
Yeah, those are decisions to make, and like you sort of say, Diaz has missed a few games.
Yeah,
but even those missed a few games, he's still there. It's not like he's now going to miss. And I think the rotation, hasn't been so much this year, but it tends to be more in the midfielders who do a lot more running. Now, they will rotate a few more. They will miss a few games. I do think that their value, but I also agree with you that Spurs expect hopping on and hopping off going forward. Spurs have only played 20, so they've got the most games. They're still in the cup. Kane plays every minute. So, and they've got a tricky game in the cup, to be honest. They're home to Brighton. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine they'll put out a good team. So, it's a balancing act. But what I'm sort of saying is I wouldn't be going for Kane and Ronaldo and Lukaku up front. I'll pick one and may switch between a few of them.
Yeah, no, you're right. And interestingly, looking at those optimum teams, I'm not too far. I've got eight of those players in my current team. So I've got Cancelo, Trent, Laporte, Rudiger. I'll flip Rudiger out, but I'll get him in again, obviously. Salah, Bowen, Gallagher, and Antonio in my team at the moment. I'm quite happy, and it just it kind of leads me to believe that I should just almost leave those players alone, and then rotate the 2 or 3 other kind of positions with the fixtures and and that kind of stuff. It's so we talk a good game, don't we? It's very hard doing it in practice. That's the thing.
I thought you were going to say earlier, the one thing I've done this season is listen to my own advice, because I think that's the thing. Every end of season one and pre-season, you're always like, I wish I'd listened to my own advice. But
I would say just kind of what is in my head. Big shout out to Paul McAnulty. I'm sure you guys know from from the Sky Pod. He's an incredible fantasy player, and one thing I learned off him playing Sky, which has helped me this year massively in Telegraph beyond no end, and again, it's a pretty basic rule, but when you actually apply it, you realize how many transfers you save. Is that I haven't had to make one transfer this season to accommodate another transfer, in terms of I've put my team structure first even above who I think are the best players, and that has helped me no end in terms of saving transfers. Because how many times, right, you need to get in Lukaku. I can't afford Lukaku, right? I've got to downgrade so and so to so. And it could be such a sideways downgrade. It could be like Diaz to Laporte to be able to get salary. I mean, that's such a crazy transfer. But Paul kind of he's hammered that into me both in Sky and in Telegraph, and that has helped my Telegraph game no end. I put up my articles on the hub. Maintaining that structure for me has been, and it's only now I've gone a little bit awry at the moment because of the FA Cup and those little 3-for-1s and 4-for-1s. But as soon as it all settles back down again, that for me again is going to be absolutely key, and just making sure every single transfer counts rather than doing these stupid sideways accommodating moves. How have you guys done with that this year, Luke? How have you done with that this year? Have you done the same thing, or?
I can't remember there being any. I think I had Sanchez, and I would have kept him, but I needed 0.1.
Or you moved to
But
Ramsdale.
that was the little nudge to get Ramsdale, which also it gave me. It may have given me a 1 for 1, but I did that before Ramsdale. Well, he'd had a couple of clean sheets, but when it looked like he was nailed, so that's the closest. But I think, to be honest, I would have made that move anyway.
I think Sanchez had the red card that weekend, didn't he?
I think that's what it was. I think you're right. It was the red card, and then I got So that wasn't, but that helped me. But that's the closest I've come this season. But I'm with you. I mean, I've heard Paul talk about that for years as well, and it's something that's resonated with me. And I mean, to be fair, I sort of did it, but yeah, it's good to hear it from a good player, isn't it? And you kind of think, yeah, actually. So that is probably one of my underlying rules, that bar extreme circumstance, like a player is killing you week after week, you don't do it. But then I think this season's been a bit different, because I would argue that if you're doing that, you're probably bringing in Dennis or Gallagher or, Ramsdale at the back. And actually, if you factor in the long-term move this season, you want those really cheap, high-quality enablers anyway. So the senior, I mean, that was, I think I've talked about it, was either this season, pre-season, or the previous one, is that my tactic at the start of the season is always to find the top 2 or 3 enablers, get on them early, and just stick. Like, I thought it was going to be Basuma this year, but obviously he was a naughty boy at one point in some clubs, but allegedly, sorry. But I think that's made it a bit easier this season. But yeah, absolutely, it's one of the best bits of advice you can have. And I think we haven't got the transfer stats in here, but I've been keeping a close eye on them when you've been publishing them, or the Telegraph have, and it's utterly bonkers how many transfers people have used in and around us. So I think anybody who's in the top 2,000, if you've got sort of over 15 transfers, you are in a very good position right now, I think, is the way I view it.
We'll touch on those now then after I've asked Carl. Carl, have you had to make any accommodating transfers? Is it something you normally do, or something you actively try to avoid, or?
It's not something that I've actually considered when I play, but now that you've said it, it makes perfect sense. And it's maybe I do on a subconscious level. I don't recall having to do that, but I do. I just want to plug your 3-to-1 Sky podcast, because you mentioned Paul, and he says fantastic little nuggets of information during that podcast. And I think, yeah, that makes so much sense. And just to put it in, because it applies not just to Sky, it applies to Telegraph Absolutely. And official fantasy football and everywhere else. But yeah, I wish I had somebody like that sitting next to me whenever I was going to make a transfer to keep me on the straight and narrow. But I don't recall. I think the danger is that you do make a transfer that is a bit rubbish just to facilitate one transfer.
Exactly that.
And I don't think I do it. I may do it because I don't analyse it so much, or you may not realise it. But it's now that you mentioned it, hopefully it will stick in my consciousness, and I will think what I'm doing before I do it. But I don't think I do.
I coincidentally may have to do one this week, which we'll touch on later when we get to my teams. But as Luke said, exceptional circumstances. It's getting Mo Salah back. So, anyway, let's touch on the transfers left, and this is insane, right? So you mentioned so this is published every week in Telegraph Online. If you search for TFF tips, look for Telegraph. I write an article every week with kind of the best picks for next weekend. But the transfers left, top 10,000. So of the top 10,000 players, the average number of transfers left is 15, which I think is all right, actually. I think 15 is fair. It gives you a really good shout at mini leagues. It gives you a shout, a top 1K finish. I think that's fair enough. The average left in the top 1,000 is 12 left, which then you start to think, 12 is not a lot. Now, considering, we'll look at ownership next as well. Considering the ownership of Salah and players like this, people still have to get rid of Chelsea players. then get them back. It doesn't leave basically any wiggle room for any luxury transfers there, I don't think, the rest of the season. If we bear in mind that, some teams have still got just under half their season left, plus FA Cup. 12 transfers is not a lot. And the top 100 average, they have got an average of 9 transfers left. So when we consider that, I think Carl said you had 19, which I think is a decent amount, especially in your position. Oh, Carl has just left us for a minute by the looks. I'm sure he'll be back in a second. You can see 2 of me at the moment.
He's off to get one of those 10 extra transfers you guys get on Sky or something. I know people keep going on about
Carl was
that,
like,
but...
oh shit, I didn't realise everyone had that left. So Carl had 19 left, but obviously he's in the top 1K, so he's in a really good spot. Luke, I think you said you had, was it 19 left, but you got 22 in your other?
19 right? And 22, yeah. So I'm three. I'm just trying to find my position in the other team, but 320 something in one team.
Nice. With
22 left. So that feels good if the average is 12.
Absolutely. And I'm just looking at mine, actually. I've got a couple of teams doing okay, actually. I've got one. So my main team, this team, has got 21 left, and it is 268th overall. And I've got another team that's got a slightly few more points, only a point or so. That's got 18 left, and that's in 259th position. And I think I've got 2 more in the top 1K, but they're not as high as though, and they've got like 18, 19 left. So what I plan to do is obviously differentiate a little bit, kind of later on with those teams. But yeah, my main team, like looking at those transfers left, looking at my team as well. This is the thing, I only need to make 3 or 4, and my team is set for another month. I'm really, really happy with it.
Yeah, I tell you what, if we don't make the top 100 this season, we've done something wrong.
We have
transfers left. Like
you're right. But yeah, hopefully, Carl returns. You've got 2 of me, one of us on a lag at the moment. I'll skip Carl's other slides until he comes back. So, Luke, if we just look at the overall ownership then, and the top of this, again, it's not really something I look at much in Telegraph, but the top player really, really surprised me. Diego Jota, 43% owned in the whole game. I mean, he may seem a reasonably obvious pick, but to be owned by 40% of all teams this late on in the season, I find it crazy, because normally it would be someone like, I don't know, Ronaldo or Kane or Trent or someone like that. But he's top. Cancelo is second, and Gallagher is third on 36.
That's the bonkers one. Gallagher's only third. I mean, what are you doing if you haven't got him?
Yeah.
Sorry.
You need to get him in, don't you? Definitely.
Yeah.
Luke and Carl have switched spots on screen, which doesn't matter, but they switch spots. We're just looking at ownership. Carl, Jota top 43%, Cancelo second on 40, Gallagher third on 36, Trent fourth on 36, Antonio still fifth on 35, Rudiger. So as I mentioned earlier, just for example, Rudiger is a player that a lot of people are going to want to get rid of. Same as Mount, who's also in this list. Reece James also in this list, and so is Lukaku. So, as we know, they're all going off. And there's quite a lot of Arsenal players on this list as well. Saka, Ben White and Ramsdale. When we look at the fixtures next, we will look at the teams who've got a lot of fixtures coming up and those who've not got many. But, sorry to jump on you, Carl, but does anything kind of... surprise you in the overall ownership list at all?
So I did. I don't know if you know. I lost connection a minute ago. Not really. Well, Salah's still been at 30%.
Yeah,
probably surprises you a little bit. But all the names.
Yeah, Salah, that's probably all your disengaged, all your people up the top who are like, I can't use a transfer. Oh God.
Yeah.
Because I bet a big chunk, because Salah, I remember, was over 50, 60% owned. I bet the engaged, a lot of them will have jumped on Jota, like just as a straight swap.
Yeah, but all the names there are names that we've sort of talked about. You haven't seen any of the cheap ones like Dennis there. You could have expected, and it'd be interesting to know how much these percentages have changed. What I'd call very recently, because to me, I think Ronaldo and Kane are probably over owned, but if it's because they've got like double game weeks coming up, well, FA Cup and double game weeks that for Ronaldo he's just had, even though he disappointed in a good run, and another one coming up, and there's rumours that Kane may have one. If they're sort of coming in early for that, then fine, but I think their ownership's a little bit on the high side. And Bruno, I know Bruno's had a little purple patch. Maybe suddenly he's shot up. But if he's been stable, he hasn't performed like he has in previous years. But again, it could be a little bit of disengagement. And Kevin De Bruyne, the magician, fantastic player, but whether he's worth that cost, I would question mark considering the injury. But no, all the other players, no goalkeepers. Ramsdale just.
Yeah, Ramsdale, yeah. And Ben White. Ben White's in there.
Yeah, that's because
I know. I mean, do I have to even mention what a legend,
Okay, so we look back at the data and what it means for us so far this season. So let's have a look forward now into right. How do we manage our teams? How do we get to our teams to the point, chaps, where in a couple of months we're bordering around the top 100 and we're ready to attack? So we've got the fixtures now on screen. We've got a mixture of the fixture list from fantasyfootballhub.co.uk here on the left hand side, which shows fixture ease just for Premier League games, and then on the right hand side we've got it from ffstuff.co.uk. If I just give a brief sort of commentary of the position first. So in terms of quality of fixtures, Man United have got the next, I've got a superb run of fixtures still. Got an FA Cup game this coming weekend, and they play first as well on the Friday evening. They have Middlesbrough in that one, which is not, I don't think it's an easy game, is it? But you guess United will probably put out a strong team. They've then got Burnley, Southampton, Brighton, Leeds, and Watford, all in quite quick succession. Obviously, they had that extra game put in this week, didn't they? Into, I think it was FPL game week 25. But Man United are the only team who play six times in the next, I think it's 3 weeks, whereby there's lots of other teams play more. So Man United, so for example, I'm holding on to De Gea and Ronaldo at the moment, and so I'm obviously really pleased that extra fixture has been put in. After that set of fixtures, they do play Man City, Spurs and Liverpool straight after that. So currently I'm thinking of a Ronaldo, definitely Ronaldo, maybe De Gea, but I'll see. But a Ronaldo exit after that home to Watford game is what I'm currently looking at. Obviously depends what happens in the FA Cup, depends what other fixtures are rearranged and things, but that's my current view. Villa have got a lot of really good league fixtures, but they're obviously out of the FA Cup. Wolves have got some quite decent league fixtures. Then looking a bit more on the right hand side, Liverpool play Cardiff this weekend in the FA Cup. So my plan at the moment is I don't expect Salah will be back for that, but I think Jota will be back. So my plan is to move Alonso to Jota, I think, this weekend. So get the points off Alonso if he scores any. Move on to Jota. They're then home to Leicester, which is a wonderful fixture, which Salah may be back for. So I need to consider that when making plans. Then they have Burnley, and then they have Norwich. So Liverpool, have got a really good run of fixtures. There is a raft of rearranged games that need to go in here as well. I do believe, is it Liverpool versus Leeds? Maybe one, which could be quite a good game as well. So Liverpool fixtures as well as Man United's are looking really good. Man City as well. So they play Fulham in the FA Cup this weekend. Then they're home to Brentford and away to Norwich, which you probably couldn't ask for, a better run of games there. The interesting ones from, not a great view, I think, are definitely Chelsea and Arsenal. So if you look at Chelsea, after this, so they play on Saturday against Plymouth in the FA Cup. Then we don't see Chelsea again until FPL game week 26, in which some teams will have played 3 times. They then play away to Palace, and then after that they have another blank as they're in the Carabao Cup final. So there will be teams, for example, Man United, Man City, Liverpool, who are going to play 5, Spurs even, who are going to play 5 or 6 times, while Chelsea only play once. So that is why we're kind of talking about jumping off Chelsea, because there'll be a lot of opportunities there. And the other one is actually Arsenal. So Arsenal are out of the FA Cup, as we know. They then have a very difficult game away to Wolves. They then have Brentford before they blank again, because their opponent in that game, which I think is Liverpool, are in the final of the Carabao Cup as well. So Chelsea and Arsenal are probably 2 teams to avoid for bringing in, definitely in the short term. But I think if you hold their players now, so this is what I was talking about, maybe, Luke, around Ramsdale today, potentially. There's a 6 for 2 there without even looking hard, right? On that one. But that's the kind of next 4 or 5 weeks in terms of who's got really good fixtures from the top teams and who to maybe avoid. So that's my very kind of brief analysis there. Luke, have you got any kind of early thoughts? Look at that schedule for next month.
Yeah, I mean, it's the teams with all the rearranged games, but I think the important thing on this graphic is the stars for attack and defense.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So, like, I'm looking down that list, right? So Villa, actually, they've got better, right? So interesting, particularly I can't remember Ramsey at 2.2.
Yeah.
Well, I don't need the money at the moment, but that is an interest. I mean, potentially Dennis to him, but then there's other options there. Man United, right? Bar De Gea, right? If Ronaldo's playing, you can't rely on Bruno. So, and then Bruno's bloody expensive, excuse the language. So I don't think you can justify either of them. And then the defenders, well, they're a shambles. Yeah. De Gea's only good because he's getting the save points. He's not really getting clean sheets. So I'm like, I get they've got more games. They've tightened up a little bit. And I mean, to be honest, yeah, Burnley, Brighton, Southampton, fine. But then Southampton have just got the result against City. Leeds have got a bit better. Watford, Ranieri, so they've tightened up. So maybe the defender, but you probably, if they're tightening up, do you want an attacker? Then they've got Man City, Spurs, Liverpool, and Leicester. Like, so I'm looking at them top going, yeah, they're only top because of that double game week. So the next 2, maybe 3 weeks, fine. 4 weeks, maybe. But I think I'd rather have, like, I don't know, if you haven't got Cancelo for Man City, I'd rather have him. I'd rather have KDB for 1 less game than Bruno or Ronaldo in current form. Probably even say Foden, your favourite player in the world, Andy. But I just, yeah. So I'm intrigued as to how they will go. And then Liverpool so far down, they've got Burnley and Norwich. So, like, yeah, I mean, in FPL terms, I mean, Salah single game week against Norwich. I mean, I'll consider triple captaining. He could get 4 or 5 in that game. Do you know what I mean? And so I just think, I mean, the De Gea bit I do get, but yeah, I'm kind of looking at some of the others, and I'm just like, well, the teams with the stars is where I'm at. And even if you consider Arsenal probably defensively, they've got Wolves. I know you're saying it's difficult game, but is that game going to really be more than maybe 2-1, one way or the other? So actually, there'll be save points for both Saar and Ramsdale. One, I mean, I think Arsenal may have a higher chance of clean sheet. And then they've got Brentford, who are terrible at the moment, so you miss a game. But I mean, and so going Ramsdale to De Gea, yes, I get De Gea probably the only option for me for Man United. Watch this, and I'll have Ronaldo and I'll have Bruno in an hour's time. But I know there's a lot more games, but it's not one transfer, because you don't want De Gea for Man City, Spurs, Liverpool, Leicester. Let's be quite frank.
Fair enough.
So
that's fair enough.
if you do it, it's 2 transfers. So is he? So that's 20 points you've got to get back minimum from doing that move. Is De Gea going to outscore Ramsdale by 20 points with 6? I mean, if you factor in the Watford game, because they will concede against Man City, they'll probably get spanked like they normally do at the moment. So I'm going to say, I don't know. I'll end up having De Gea just because I know you've got him now, but just to match. But I think at the price, I'm probably still verging on the side of I'll just keep it and roll the dice. But yeah, long-winded answer, but I'm not seeing those teams at the top as great value until you get to Man City, because West Ham's form's dropped off a cliff. Leeds, they've been terrible, a bit better, but actually I don't think any of those games are particularly easy. The teams are, so I don't know. I'm not convinced on fixtures really at the moment. Sorry.
I'm quite surprised at that about West Ham. So I didn't mention them, and this is the reason I've held on to Antonio. I know he hasn't been performing right, but there's no way I can drop Antonio. He may not even play in the FA Cup, right? But Kidderminster non-league before being home to Watford, who haven't kept a clean sheet in 6 managers, before playing Leicester, who Kane had 10 shots against last week, before being home to Newcastle, I think is probably the best run of fixtures you could have. Admittedly, after that they get tough, but I'm
going to disagree. So Watford, Ranieri, we've talked about that. He's coming in, so they're going to be tighter, right? We know that. Maybe that game you'll be all right, but Kidderminster. I mean, is Bowen going to play their best player when they've got so many good midfielders who could play against Kidderminster? Let's be quite frank. So Bowen's going to get rested. And then Antonio, whose hamstrings haven't gone recently. But again, do you need to risk him? I don't know. So it's the age-old thing. The FA Cup for me is a bit of a red herring until you get down to the last, quarterfinals when they have to win. But it's Kidderminster. Do they really need to put out a full-strength team? Right? We'll see. Watford are tightening up. Leicester need to tighten up. Jesus Christ. Right? They will. They've got Ranieri.
Hudson.
That's what Carl said, right? And then Newcastle. They're playing Newcastle just after the transfer window is closed. Guarantee they will have a better team in a few days' time than they've got today. Guarantee it, right? And so Newcastle right now, I'll give you, if they're playing them this week, I'd give you that this weekend. But they're not. They're playing them in 3 weeks after the transfer window's closed. And they've got a sovereignty state backing them. So they are going to have a better team. Probably still have John Joe Shelby, but
Carl, have you ever seen someone argue so vehemently? Obviously, he hasn't got Antonio in his team. He's clearly scared, but he's not. He's not showing it. I think you can tell who out of me and Luke. So I've obviously got Ronaldo and Antonio, and Luke clearly hasn't. But what side are you on the fence?
Well, I must admit, I can't remember ever sitting here and thinking I disagree with Luke. But I disagree.
He's the only man in the world.
It just don't feel right. But for me personally, I don't look that closely at the fixtures because it makes you do things that you probably shouldn't. So like when so in some ways, I agree with the general points about the Man United fixtures. I wouldn't be piling on, but I wouldn't be taking my players out.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be overly influenced by the fixture list, because you'll end up making, if you're doing this all the time, you'll be making transfers every other week, and we know it's better to get extra games out of them. West Ham, whether they play a strong team away at Kidderminster or not, they're playing at 12:30. So the only players you can move and get an extra game would be a Man United player, which you probably don't want because of the fixtures you just mentioned. So you probably should be transferring someone in, even if Antonio plays. If he does play, if we had this conversation 2 weeks ago about whether you should be bringing in a West Ham player for getting an extra game in preparation for this, then all these arguments become a bit more valid. I don't think he'll play, but if he does play, great. If he doesn't, that's fine. I am thinking of moving off. But to me, I heard something on what's it called, FPL Planet or whatever it is, and when they talk about Sky, they sort of talked a little bit about, and I was thinking about this for this game, is think of where you want to be and then like reverse manufacture it. So what players you want and how you're going to get there. So for me, like Chelsea at 12:30. So I've got some Chelsea players and I'll be moving them on. So like Lukaku will be going to Kane, assuming he plays, and the fixtures. One thing I didn't notice when I looked at this, and I'd forgotten, is Leicester. We haven't touched on Leicester at all, which is surprising. Is they blank in game week 27.
Yeah.
Now, so I wouldn't be bringing them in, but if they win in the way at Notts Forest, then I would keep an eye on them, because so far they've played 20 games. So they've, except for Burnley, they've played the least games out of anybody in the league. They'd have this game, so that will put them like on the equivalent to 19, because they blank in week 27. So that means they've got a lot of fixtures to make up, plus they've still been in the cup and everything else. And you've got some good players. Sorry on my prep. You've got Maddison and Barnes. I don't know what prices they are. You've got Daka up front.
Yeah.
Tielemans as well.
Yeah, you've got a whole host of talented players. And I know they haven't been pulling up any trees this year, but if you think they've got 4 or 5 games to make up on the field, plus maybe the possible FA Cup, there could be some real gems in there to fill your team with going forward, because all the other teams have got games to make up. Burnley, Watford, to a lesser degree, Leeds. Do you really want to be filling your team with those players to get extra points? There's no one that really stands out. Whereas Leicester, they won the league a few years ago. And they won the FA Cup last year. They have got talent there. Yep. They just haven't quite, injuries and stuff has held them back. I think you can get some real differential bonus boosters from them.
It's a hell of a shout is Maddison, which we haven't talked about him, but his form, I know he sort of got a minor knock the other day, but he's expensive from memory. I think he's high 4s.
He's 5. I think he's 5.2
or
5.1. Yeah. He's very expensive. I think the only thing with Leicester, I was just looking at their fixtures, and appreciate, it's not all about them, but they are away to Forest, which is a tough game, as they proved against Arsenal. They then have Liverpool, then West Ham before they blank. And then they have Wolves. But I think after that, for me personally, is when I would look. But they'll have a lot of very, very good fixtures.
Oh yeah, it'd be after the blank game week. So you'll see how they got on in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
So it'll be in the next round of the FA Cup. So you may even sort of like, if they're on later during the schedule, may be able to sort of like get an extra FA Cup game. Plus they'd have four games to make up in the league. So even if they get rotated a little bit, I think they will be value for money given the games that they have. Sorry, the only other ones I want to mention is Wolves, because we mentioned them before. There is an opportunity, because Wolves have got a game against Norwich, so I imagine they'll have a decent team out, good chance of a clean sheet. So if you want to sort of switch any Chelsea players you got to get that extra Wolves game in there, and they've got games to make up. Not as many. They're on 21 compared to 23 for City.
Really good stuff there, Carl. I'm interested because we've been preaching the virtues off the back of your data of moving to 5-4-1, and then you're moving Lukaku on to Kane this weekend. So, you care to explain yourself?
Well, as my wife says, I'm a bloody hypocrite.
I'm a bloody hypocrite.
Right, who's on trial here, Fergie?
As Carl said, I love that. What Carl said? As my wife says, I'm a bloody hypocrite.
Mate. You leave him alone.
No.
He's just sided with you as well.
I know.
No, the reason it's not long term. So it's like you can transition through various phases, and that's what I hope to get. But in this period, I'm thinking FA Cup, and I'm working on the basis that Spurs are having a double game week as well. So we've got Man United, Brighton, and I hear the rumours that the week after that it's going to be Spurs, Brighton. And I'm sort of like working on that assumption, and therefore I'm just going for the extra games.
Yeah.
Plus, they've played 20 games so far, so cut all the minutes. So it's for that reason, and it's affordable because I'm going down for Wolves, and later on near the end of the year, once they've made up their games, he'll get kicked in the touch, and I can upgrade my Wolves defender to another City or Liverpool or Chelsea player.
That makes sense. I was only joking, Carl, obviously, but it's good. I think it's good for the listeners, and watchers to understand that even though we, obviously say 5-4-1 cheap up front, there's periods of time obviously where you look to, because obviously all the good players go through runs of games of scoring lots of points. Right? You can't just ignore that, can you? So it's making the most of them, but it's at the right time. Those kind of those optimum teams are season long, aren't they? And it's a good point about jumping on the extra fixtures, I think.
Yeah, but nothing's rigid, and you've always got to be flexible, and like you sort of say. So I am being. It's not optimal for a long period of time.
Not exactly.
But sometimes you've got to take a little bit of a punt, as they say. You
have. So in terms of play, I just made a very short list of players, I suppose, that I'm interested in. I think over the next few weeks, maybe kind of month or two. Obviously, got De Gea. I think Ramsdale and Mendy for me are two. I mentioned Mendy earlier. They're two I'm going to look at. After, because it's quite nice actually. Once United's really nice run ends, when they play Watford, they go Man City, Tottenham, Liverpool, for example. That coincides quite nicely with Chelsea assets returning back, with Arsenal having more games. Leicester you mentioned as well, and West Ham is quite similar actually. So I've got two Man United and two West Ham players. So I'm going to look to transition at that point, to different sorts of players. I think, I think my advice, and I guess your guys' advice, is that if you don't have Cancelo, he's just, for me, especially at his price, just a complete essential in the game. He's just the best. He's probably, I don't know if he's the best, maybe Gallagher's the best, but he's one of the best players in the game. You just have to have it, especially with their fixtures as well. He's just insane. You've got to have him. I would personally put Trent in there as well, and I think Laporte, if he keeps playing, he's got such attacking intent. Laporte, haven't he? He's I think that those three are almost must-haves at the moment. And when Chelsea's fixtures change back, I think Reece James and Rudiger are probably, for me, two players. So I'm kind of maybe looking at what I'll have in a month's time with my team. Probably looking at a back five of, I don't know, maybe Trent, Cancelo, Laporte, Rudiger and James, which is pretty awesome. I would, obviously all this is dependent on lots of things, but I think that's roughly what I'll be moving to. Obviously, you can chuck Diaz in there, maybe Robertson in there, and things. But I'm not sure you really need to go for Wolves defenders or Arsenal defenders, because I think that those kind of players, especially the Chelsea players, their price provide so much value. I don't think you need them personally. I think moving on to midfield, I think if you don't have Gallagher, just get him. I also think personally, and you guys may not agree, but I think if you don't have Bowen at his price at 3.9, I think he looks a shoo-in, both in the short term, but you can see, in the short term we talked about his fixtures, but you can see how he carries on at 3.9. Plus, he's basically a striker playing in midfield, so he takes up a nice midfield spot there.
He's just everything for West Ham is going. It's all about him now. Antonio keeps drifting out to the left. Antonio's the one whipping in the crosses now, which is bonkers if you think how good he was at the start of the season. But yeah, Bowen is head and shoulders of the best West Ham player now. And
he even gets the odd tackle bonus as well, just to kind of rub salt in the wound for non-owners. Obviously Salah, couple. So Rafinha, Luke, I know you're pretty high on Rafinha, and I personally think he's pretty good. Leeds have played 21 games, so they do have a few fixtures in hand. I think at 3.9 he's very good. He gets constant attacking returns. I think he's got tackle bonus a couple of times as well. Coutinho is one I'm kind of interested in, but I think it's expensive. He's about 4.8, which is just a bit steep for me when you consider like Bowen is 3.9. Ramsey, we've obviously mentioned at 2.2, just as an absolute pure enabler. Oliver Skip for Spurs is 2.2 as well. He doesn't get a lot. He gets tackle bonus from time to time, but he's also incredibly cheap. And if you're not spending much money, then De Bruyne, to my chagrin, is, and I agree with you, Carl. I don't think he's worth the money, but he still finds the way of just getting an attacking return nearly every game, which it's a real pain. They're my kind of mids, and then up front, Jota for me. Ronaldo probably short term, or Kane, as you say, Carl. I think Antonio is. I think if you hold Antonio, I think hold him for a few more weeks, then I'd move off him. Brosher for me is probably the enabler of choice at 2.4. I think he's and their fixtures actually after game week. So next they do have Spurs and United, which obviously hard games, but after that they go on a run of 3 home games in 4 against Everton, Norwich, and Watford. They've also then got Burnley and Leicester after that as well. So they have got a really good run of fixtures, a 2.4 if you're looking for an enabler there. And just one to maybe just keep an eye on. And, he may scoff. I certainly won't be bringing him in yet. But Elanga at Man United is a 2.5 million forward as well, who's starting every game at the moment. So, if you are looking for an Uber differential at a very cheap price and you just want someone who no one's looking at, he could maybe, fit the bill. So they're kind of roughly the players I'm kind of looking at now and maybe a little bit more into the future. Carl, have you got kind of anyone to add to that list, or do you disagree with any of them?
I don't disagree. Laporte is a player. So I'm just going to stop a second. Is it me? Just me? I'm getting a bit of feedback.
Yeah, it is, Carl. Yeah.
It's just me.
Yeah, I think so. I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm like hearing myself and then echoing back. Okay, I think it's okay now.
Yeah.
In terms of players I'm looking at, very similar list, especially the Southampton striker. The only one I mentioned is I think Laporte's much better than Diaz, not because of so much his attacking prowess, but just because he's cheaper. So I just think he's better value for money. You mentioned Krokovic of Chelsea, so maybe longer term he'll be sort of coming back. But I think for me, my plan is, I'm going to butcher my team a little bit, is up until about mid-February to end of February. And then I'll be looking much more longer term to sort of like land the team that I want to the end of the season. And of course, you sort of said when Chelsea come back, and it's like, well, probably sort of around that time, maybe a bit later, because who's progressing and getting all those extra fixtures and playing in the cup final, that sort of stuff. And I know sometimes it may be a sort of mini trap, because quite often you see teams, you think, oh, I've got all these extra fixtures, and they play such weakened teams, especially when they're in Europe. But I still can't help myself. I'm a little bit greedy, and I always think I'm going to get loads of helpings.
No, that's fair enough. And like I say, I'm not. I think that's yours again, Carl. A bit of feedback on yours. Yeah, I think this period around roughly FPL game week, as I say, 27 or 28, just after Man United play Watford, and West Ham have got Wolves on that week, but both teams' fixtures really turn around then. But I think I'm going to have a bit of a transition now to really look at this next month or so. But I kind of agree with you. I think once we get to that, we're approaching the final quarter of the season, and I think then I'll be looking to land on that kind of 5-3-2. If I go for Brosher, for example, I just can't do 5-4-1. I'll probably end up on a 5-3-2 as an example. Probably Salah, Gallagher, and Bowen as it stands at the moment. And a really, really hot back five and keeper, and maybe rotate the one striker up front. But yeah, they're the two transitions I'm kind of looking at the moment. That sort of team. What about you, Luke? What are your thoughts on players?
I'm a bit nervous from the last sort of 10-15 minutes chat, because I think this is going to be really interesting. So I want us to circle back on this, because I think the tactic you're playing is you've got the West Ham boys who I'm Bowen aside, right? I'm not convinced them being at the top of the fixtures with their form adds up. I think they cancel each other out. And the Man United side of things, I'm just not convinced. There will be one Man United player who smashes it, right? Because they've got the fixtures. But is it Ronaldo? Is it Bruno? Is it De Gea? I don't. It could even be it could be Luke Shaw, for God's sake. It could be any of them. So while you guys have been talking, I've been looking at the team I want, and I'm 3 transfers from the team I want that I would probably sit on for the season. If I had 3 transfers left, I know what they would be. So I'd go Jota and Dennis to Reece James and Rudiger, and I'd go KDB to Salah. And then I've got Bowen, Gallagher, Rafinha, right? Rafinha scored against Man City. Do you know what I mean? He can score. He's on pens. It doesn't matter the team. He's their best player. He's their talisman. All of that. So I'm now nervous, because I could go chasing the 5-for-1s, but ultimately what I want to do is come back to the team I've got right now. Now, the flip side to that is what I did in Sky a few years ago, because I was chatting to Mark Edworthy, and there was one point where I was like, I can't remember what score, but I'd almost let the team rot, and I'd kind of forgotten about it. So we're going back about 4 or 5 seasons ago. And he just went, you're doing quite well. And I was like, what? And then I looked at it, and I had about 26 or 28 transfers left after at the overhaul point. And then I just burned through them. I just wasted it. And I had a team that was good. And I should have just left it and burnt the got rid of
them right at the end.
Yeah, or maybe just for the last couple of games, yeah. But the thing that's going on in my head is this little window of probably 6 weeks, 8 weeks, where you get these FA Cup games and you get the fixture postponements because of COVID. Someone will win this game because of this next 6 to 8 weeks, but it's probably not going to be me, because I'm not. I just, in my head, I'm going, I've got a team I really like, bar a couple of moves, but those moves are earmarked for Chelsea coming back. So
why don't you just move on in the meantime for the Chelsea players?
But those moves are getting KDB out, right? We've just talked about these. The
No,
best
fair
player
enough.
in the
Leaving
best
him,
team.
I agree with that.
But I need to get him out to get Salah in. I've got Jota, who is probably Liverpool's best value
You got to
player.
leave Jota in, yeah.
Right. I've got Dennis, who we talked about, is probably, I don't know, third, fourth best player in the game valued. So maybe he goes. But then I can't. We talked about you've got to do 2 moves. So I need to get Dennis to someone I want. I need to move on KDB, Kane, or Jota. Well, why would I move them right now? So I'm a bit of a quandary as to whether I just go, you know what, I back this horse, I'll stick with the patience game. And then maybe I go ballistic in the last 6 weeks and hopefully overhaul you guys when you burn a few, doing all these little hop-ons, hop-offs, and you're down to sort of 10 transfers. I'll probably still have 16 or something left. But I don't know. I think this is going to be really tight. It's going to be really, really interesting to just see. Because I just hope you don't but I hope you don't soar and I just there. But one of these 2 tactics is going to work, and I don't think there's any middle ground. So I think I'm going to be on the side of I'm going to stick because I like my team a lot, bar Dennis.
I think you've got a big opportunity just to. I agree with your moves. But with the transfers you've got left, I can't see why you can't just make 1 or 2 to take advantage of these extra fixtures. Personally,
I don't disagree. One or two, but
yeah, 1 or 2. That's all you need.
Look at him trying to talk me into it.
I think you could do I don't even know who who exactly, because as you said, you're absolutely right. Your team's in it's in a bloody fantastic spot. Have you got Laporte?
Yeah, I've got Laporte, Cancelo, TAA, Rafinha, Gallagher, KDB, Bowen. I don't want to touch.
I definitely do Ramsdale onto De Gea.
I guess, but then I want him back.
And then, well, will you? I don't know if you will. I don't know.
I don't know. Burnley, Newcastle, Norwich, Brentford, Southampton.
Yeah, but that's in 2 months.
Oh no, that's time. Chelsea. Sorry. We'll have
a suntan by then.
Actually, but yeah, that's true.
and maybe I'm not sure exactly how much you got in the bank, but you could surely make use of Dennis to someone else. Surely, to goodness, anyone. A Wolves defender.
I think to be fair, that's one move. I've got 1.6 in the bank, so I can go up to 4.2. So yeah, but the 4.2s I've won are all Chelsea, really.
Yeah, but then you can move on to Chelsea. You can move on to Chelsea.
Yeah,
because you're missing 4 to 6 games here with certain.
Tell you
players.
what, shall I just bring in Luke Shaw?
No, don't bring in Luke Shaw.
No, I've shouted it out.
No, I think there's definitely opportunities to just have 1 or 2 in this period, because if you don't, just down to volume of fixtures more than anything, I think it's such, as you say, a key time in the season. I think you might regret it.
Yeah, I'm intrigued on Carl's view, but I'm with you.
You're intrigued in my view. You're intrigued in Carl's view. Go ahead, Carl. What do you think?
Well, it's a tricky one. I'm envious that you're in that position where you think your team is perfect. For starters, but it does remind me of 2 years.
It's not perfect, Carl.
Yeah, no,
but it's got Dennis in it. But
But you in theory, you've got about 3 moves and you're in your perfect team, and it reminds me of I don't know if it's last season or the season before, and I saw your starting team, and it's gorgeous in the sense that it had the structure of players that you'd want, really solid, good scoring players, and you could just tweak in between. And so it's similar to what Andrew was sort of saying, is that if you think your team is in good shape after 3 transfers, and you've got your plan of how you're going to finish the season off in the last month or 2 months, whether it's going for an FA Cup team or whatever, how many transfers have you got spared to waste? And even if it's just one player, often it's the most expensive player that you can just sort of jump on and off him and always get back to your perfect team and try to think, how can you maximize it? And does that, because no point for this season with 5 transfers left. So it's how best to get rid of them. It's okay, just take your most expensive player, or maybe not because of Salah, but you can imagine and just sort of say, right, I'm just going to use that one to use all my transfers to jump in and out and get the most value out of that. That's what I would do.
Yeah, no, and I think that's sound advice. The one thing that's in the back of my head is there's been many. I mean, God, I've played Telegraph since I was 14 or something. So I don't know, I'm 25 plus years or something. No, well, it's longer than that now. But the one season that really stood out for me was that there was the Middlesbrough Man City FA Cup final one, and I had 4 transfers left in a mini league. I was 4 points behind, and I used all 4 of those transfers to the last game of the season and the final one when you saw. And Stuart Downing, I think it was, that scored 3. Well, he scored 2 and got 3 assists, or he scored a hat trick or something. And I just jumped on all of the right. I mean, I won my mini league by about 60 points, and I was 2 points behind the leader going into that FA Cup final. So there is that argument. If it's a mini league you're going for, you can win it. If you go into the overall finish, then doing that is a daft thing. But again, there's different tactics. But having those transfers back, I mean, again, you can only use 5 in a week. So any more than 5, if you've got them, you're screwed. But so I might just do that just to annoy Fergie, because I would love to beat him by like 1 point on that last day of the season, because I've used those transfers. So
I tell you what I do. I tell you what I do. I obviously haven't looked at it in great depth, right? But I'd be tempted to move Ramsdale to De Gea, and I would be tempted to move Dennis onto
Broadger, whatever.
Onto Broadger, because they have Coventry in the FA Cup, and then they have Spurs United. But after that, their run's amazing. And if you bring Broadger in, it means you can basically pick any player in the game who you want for the rest of the season. That's what I'd be tempted to do.
Anyway, this is not the Luke's team.
No, but
seems to be now.
It's good because I'm pretty sure.
I genuinely appreciate it. No, it's good.
No, I don't. I think there'll be a lot of people watching and listening who hopefully benefiting from having a discussion around the structure and when to use transfers and not just hop from player to player, because you just burn through them, don't you? But Broadger seems to be the kind of player which we've all said looks to be a great option moving forward if he keeps his play. That's the only problem with him, which I'm slightly, because they have got Armstrong and Adams, haven't they? But he seems to be, doesn't he? He should have scored a couple against Man City on the weekend. He looked fantastic. He scored a goal just offside and whatever else. Okay.
Can I just sort of say before you move on, that thing was probably the worst thing that happened to you, Luke, because I think that is bad thinking in keeping your transfers right to the end, unless it's a bit of a joke just to pip someone at the end to have a bit of a laugh. I think if you'd used them earlier, you'd have won by more. But because it sticks in your mind, you're quite happy to leave it late. But I think that's probably suboptimal, in my view.
One of my favourite all-time players forever. He's up there with Steve Malbranc. Stuart Downing and Steve Malbranc. The amount of leagues they've won me because nobody ever got them. Brilliant.
I'm not sort of saying they're the wrong players. I'm just sort of saying you shouldn't have left it to the last week.
Okay, we've
that was my highest ever finish in TFF. I think I was in top 40 that year. So, but hey ho.
Yeah,
you would have been in the top 10 if you'd used them a bit earlier, Luke.
Maybe not. That I got about 70 points off that FA Cup game, 70 or 80 points off one game. That most people got about 15.
That's hard to argue against. Players.
Yeah,
hard to argue against. We've had masses of questions in, so let's go through a few of the questions. Thank you so much, everyone, to those who sent them in. Daniel Moody, with players back from AFCON soon, I think we need to be mature and sensible and meet this question head on. So this is what I mentioned earlier. Is Salah a trap? No, Salah is just an incredible player who you need. Even if he plays against Leicester and I can't afford him, I'm trying to find a way to bring him in because he's so flipping essential. Have you got any alternative views at all, guys? I know Carl maybe on the value side, but no, is he just in for you?
I didn't have him for the first 7 weeks, I think. And
Remember.
um, um, I won't be doing that again. So no, bring him in. He's no trap. He's just fantastic this year.
Yep. You just leave him in. Luke, how about you? Look at his face.
I don't need to answer. I mean, if you're watching, he's a must. He just, yeah. He's
stick him in and leave him in.
He's the most expensive player. He's missed some games and he's still in the best value table.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So you got to have him.
Got to have him. I completely agree. And Daniel also asks, which would you prefer, a so-so player with extra fixtures, e.g. Dwight McNeil, or a very good player with no extra fixtures, e.g. Jared Bowen? So I know I think about this. Luke, I come to you first on this one.
I would rather have, well, again, it's there's shades of grey here, but in general, I'd rather have a better player for 3 games than a crap player for 4 or 5.
Carl, what about you?
No, I agree completely. So the question itself isn't quite fair, because I presume like Bowen is he's fantastic value in 3.9, and I presume O'Neill's about 2 million. But yeah, I prefer the better player at this stage. I would swing to a different answer if there's only 4 weeks to go, and somebody's got 4 versus 2, but so long to go. Best player.
Same. And yeah, if everyone noticed, even when we were talking through the fixtures, we didn't really touch on many teams outside of the top teams, did we? Because they're just, I don't know, they're just not really worth looking at in Telegraph, are they? Maybe players like Rafinha, for example, because he's Leeds talisman. Maybe Brosher for Southampton because he's so cheap. Maybe Wolves defenders because their defense is so good. But outside of that, players for Burnley and all these other sorts of teams are just not worth it in this format, because they just don't return enough. Who's got the kit asks 4 questions, so let's run through these. He says, who would you jump on now with 4, 5, 6 players like Man City last year? So obviously last year we jumped on Man City, didn't we? A lot of us did. I think I had 8 at one stage. Carl, have you got any thoughts on this at the moment? I think the game's different this year.
It is very different this year, and I think the short answer is no. There's nobody I'm going to sort of wade into until you see double fixtures and them all pile up. Man City was completely different last year because they had the League Cup game, which was brought forward, and they had they had loads of games. They're the best team by miles, and they had loads of games compared to others. So it was no brainer last year, but I don't think you're in the same position this year.
No, I agree. And the template this year, as we've talked about, right? So maybe De Gea, Ramsdale, Laporte, Trent, Cancelo, a couple of Chelsea defenders, Gallagher, Bowen, Salah, and one of maybe Jota and one of Ronaldo or Kane up front is very, very strong this year. There's no team seems to have a really outstanding run of fixtures. You would only jump on a premium team who have got a significant amount of fixtures as opposed to everyone else. And last year, I think the last 2 or 3 years, Man City in January have had 5 or 6 games to other teams 1 or 2, with the way that things have fallen. But with AFCON this year, the fact that with COVID things, I don't think it's going to be the case this year. Maybe later on, I do get the sense, and I may be wrong, but I think that Chelsea players later on may be really good. But then, are you really, we want to be taking out Cancelo and support, and Laporte? I'm not so sure. Luke, I'll ask you this one: how much does FA Cup progression affect choices? Because I know you used to be really big on the FA Cup, didn't you?
No, I still am.
Okay.
But I'm never big on the FA Cup until you get to quarter-final, because I just think my experience and my view, there's been a few that haven't done it this year, but until you get to quarter-final, none of the big teams play their first 11. So the reality is it's an absolute lottery as to which of the 3 first teamers play, just to give the continuity for the youth team. right? So, I mean, Chelsea may be different against Argyle because obviously Argyle are a really good team and they need to win it because you don't want to be embarrassed by our lot. But I think all jokes aside, I think you've got to be lucky. And then the other thing is, if I'm targeting the FA Cup, and this is why I always do advocate the FA Cup, pick the 2 teams you think are going to make the final. I know it's hard to do that, but if it's like, if there's, I don't know, Liverpool, Man City, and then you've got like Burnley, Saints, and Leicester or something, well, logically jump on Liverpool and City because they're most likely to make the final, and just play the odds, because you will want them for the semi-final, you will want them for the final. And that's 2 extra games that nobody else is going to get. So but until we know who's going to be in the quarterfinals, I'm like a bit meh on the FA Cup these days, because it's just, in my opinion, it's been massively devalued over the last sort of 10, 15 years. And clubs will prioritise Champions League and they'll prioritise the Premier League over it. So they very rarely play their strong team.
I think my only argument in Telegraph, and we saw this actually in the 3rd round, I think quite surprisingly, I think we'll see it again this time round, is that you get to see the lineups before you make your changes, which is really big in this game. So just for example, if I move Rudiger onto Jota against Cardiff, I'll only put Jota on against Cardiff if Jota starts. If he doesn't start, I'll leave it. So I think that's the only thing with the FA Cup. But I would also say that I wouldn't jump on one FA Cup. I did it with Lukaku on Chesterfield, probably as did Carl, right? Because they were a non-league team. But I would normally say I would only do it if it was part of a longer-term move and that player you were bringing in had a decent run of fixtures. So I'll use Jota for me as an example. Liverpool then go on a run of Leicester, Burnley, Norwich, which are 3 fantastic fixtures, and they're going to have a double at some point as well. Whereas, say, if... I'm trying to think of a player here, like Leicester have got Nottingham Forest, but then immediately after they are Liverpool and West Ham. So I probably wouldn't go for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think it was last season, the season before, and again, I think I'm going off long-term memory here, so this is completely shot. But I think there was a Spurs kid who banged in, I think he got 4 or 5 goals against a non-league team, but it was like the goal. You saw the Spurs team. I'm almost certain it was Spurs, but you saw the Spurs lineup and you thought, actually, that's quite a good Spurs team, and that's a team like 6 divisions below. Like, backing a striker here could be good, and he got 25, 30 points. Now that off one transfer. So I guess in my position, if you can see a £2.5 million striker for, I don't know, Man City, that's playing against a non-league team, you could waste a transfer on that as an absolute roll the dice. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of see it. If Lukaku's starting against Argyle, I'm going to be very, very, very nervous and slightly jealous of your team, and hopefully not so by 3 o'clock, Carl. But yeah, again, these are the things. To win the game, you've got to get these decisions right and have them go your way. So it's an interesting one. But yeah,
I'd personally chuck Antonio in there as well against Kidderminster if he starts.
No,
and it's because they're home to Watford again 3 days later. It's not just the one fixture; they've got a run of games. So I that's the way I kind of
No, you've made me nervous about not having it. I'm slightly regretting getting rid of it.
That's the plan. He also asks Carl what to do with Chelsea. So we talked about, haven't we, about maybe getting rid and bringing back. Is that your plan, Carl?
Yeah, that's my plan. It's should have been planning this a little bit in advance of today, but because you should have seen the Chelsea fixtures, it's okay to keep them because they're 12:30 kickoff, and then you could have a choice of who they're moving on to. And you can see their FA Cup fixtures, and you can move them in if one of your choices are playing. But yeah, I'd be moving them on and coming back because obviously they've got the League Cup final. So not until after the League Cup final would I bring any of them back.
Completely agree there. And Luke, Villa players, yes or no? Do any of them interest you?
Not well. Actually, Luke Dean got an assist the other day,
Not a
didn't
bad
he?
shout.
Assist and a clean sheet. It's ridiculous. I mean, Everton, they did get rid of arguably their best player because he's fallen out with the manager and sacked the manager 2 days later. I mean, what was that about? Seriously. I think Ramsey at 2.2 is interesting, because if like Adam was saying, or you were saying sort of secondhand, that Adam is saying that he's in the team. I mean, he just has to average 1.5 points for the rest of the season to be really good value, to be quite frank, at that price. So I mean, I guess he's sort of pushing for Coutinho. I mean, he's a good player, but I mean, Villa look quite tight from what I've seen. It's more like they're going to win 1-0 or 2-1. They're not going to be spanking teams. So Coutinho will get a few, but he's a bit pricey compared to, I don't know, Bowen for 1 million less or so, Rafinha 1 million less or so, Gallagher 2 million less. I mean, I think you'd still go with them. And yeah, so I maybe Ramsey, maybe Luke Dean, just as a bit of a punt if you can get 3 for 1, 4 for 1. But I think the rest will probably just go now. Watch and see.
They're out of the cup, but their fixtures after that, they go Leeds, Newcastle, Watford, Brighton, Southampton. They got a really nice kind of short to medium term run of fixtures. But as you say, because they haven't got the cup, they're a couple down. But I think Luca Dean's 3.9. I think he could be good, but he's probably a shift on to someone else. Ramsey, if you're desperate, but I can't. You could put in Watkins or Coutinho, and they could score 2 or 3 goals in the next, the few games. But would that justify 2 transfers? I'm not sure.
I don't know. Well, I might go Dennis to him now because I can do that. Get Leeds, Newcastle, Watford, Brighton, Southampton, then a shift to the Chelsea, to one of the either Rudiger for Burnley, Newcastle, Norwich, Brentford for 2 transfers. Maybe I found my move.
That's the move.
So yeah, maybe, yeah. Pile into Villa.
Johnny K says, I'm a Spurs fan for my sins. Kane or no Kane? Yeah, it's a tough one with Spurs. Their fixtures a little bit mixed. They have Brighton in the FA Cup, which I think will be a hard game. They then have Southampton. Then they've got Wolves. I think they're going to have a double against Brighton again. And they've got Man City. I've got Ronaldo, and I think, rightly or wrongly, I think I just prefer Ronaldo over this period. Spurs just really haven't done a lot. It'd be interesting to see when Son is back, because I think he massively influences Spurs and Kane's output. But Kane is not someone I own at the moment. I think if Spurs had a really good FA Cup fixture, I think I would have brought him in a couple of weeks ago. Because it's home to Brighton, I think that's a tough game, and none of those games are really easy. So I'm not too scared of him at the moment. Carl, you're talking about bringing him in though, aren't you? So you've got a different view on Kane?
Yeah, it's and especially Kane versus Ronaldo. So Kane isn't performing like he has done historically, but there's been an upturn, and the way Spurs playing, the chances Kane has had, still not better than what it was, but not as good as previous years. But he will play. He's the top class striker. He will play. If Spurs got a chance of going far in the cup, he will probably play most of the cup games. They're not distracted by Europe, and they've so far played 20 games. So they've got 2 games in hand over Man United. So they've got games to catch up. So I'm much more positive on Kane than I am Ronaldo. And I'll be getting him in for the short term. And yes, from what we sort of said before, he won't be there long term, but hey, they've got games to catch up. And I think it's worth a transfer to go on and see how it goes.
Fair enough. Luke, you get the deciding vote on Kane. What do you think?
So I'm just looking at the fixture swapped on him because I've got him. And like, so he's started to hit a bit of form. And I think, I mean, let's all just agree he is one of the best 5 players in the league. I mean, last season he was probably top 2 players in the league. So I wouldn't necessarily be rushing to buy him, but I wouldn't be rushing to sell him.
Yeah.
Personally, I've got the dilemma of I've got to lose Kane or KDB. So if I'm going to lose Kane, I'm going to get the Saints game, and then the day after I'm going to bring in Salah for him. Whereas if I lose KDB, I can wait a couple more games. So I'm not 100% sure, but he's the sort. I mean, again, you know, three seasons ago, what did he get? Hat trick, 4, hat trick, 2, 1, 3 in the last 5-6 games or something. It was just unbelievably bonkers, and he's got that in his locker. And I think Ronaldo, yes, to a degree, but I just think he plays in a team that's a bit disjointed, so I can't see him doing that. So I think Salah's the only one that can match the ceiling that Kane's got. So again, I think if you're chasing, I can understand it. If you're defending, I'd probably, like, defending a lead, like, I probably wouldn't risk it unless you're sort of full with transfers. But I'm definitely not I don't want to sell him. Is owning him, I'm quite happy, and I think I'd personally rather have him than Ronaldo.
So we're all on the fence. I think I think the thing with it is as well is this, you know, when we're talking about this, it's obviously, you know, you're absolutely right, Luke, and what you say is whether you own him or not already as well. I think is a big part of this. But I think when we're talking about transfers, the great thing about Telegraph is that even if he does score 2 or 3 goals in his next 3 or 4 games, okay, you know, it'll do owners very well, but it's not going to hurt non-owners massively. And I think that's the way I kind of think about it, is that I think even if Kane scores 3 or 4 goals, I think Ronaldo could even get like 1 or 2. What am I, 7 or 10 points down? It's not worth a transfer. So I'm, you know, it all depends on it. But I think the kind of overarching thing is just get the best value players, the highest scoring players in the game. I think that should be the focus for the transfers.
I think Cancelo. I think the flow chart is probably: do you own Salah? No. Buy Salah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you own Kane? Do you own Salah? No. Buy Salah. Do you own Salah? Yes. Do you own Ronaldo? Do you own Kane? No. Okay, buy one of them. But I think it's just, you know, going back to that earlier question, if you haven't got Salah and you haven't got Kane, get Salah.
But I'd also say, if you haven't got Gallagher or Cancelo, or for me, Trent or Bowen, like, I would buy those players above Kane. I still would, and above Ronaldo. So sorry, Carl.
Go on, Carl. Where are you going, Carl's?
Well, I agree in principle what you're saying, but Salah isn't here now, and he won't be for a little while. So if you've got Lukaku, and he has his last game, and both Andrew and myself have him, and Kane starts, you get Kane. And then he plays again before Salah plays. And then it's like, you then see more double fixtures when they're coming. And it's, I can't remember exactly, but don't forget, Salah's also going to blank in a couple of weeks. So it's like, oh, well, it depends on how the fixtures may fall. I'm just sort of saying, but you can make a decision. Should it be Kane or should it be Ronaldo that goes to Salah? And for me, I was thinking much more Ronaldo after he's had his double game week, because he's less 90 minutes assured of playing, especially when the Champions League's back.
No, that's fair.
But yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just options and see how it goes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the answer to the question is it's a very grey area from this debate. It's not a simple yes, no. So it's a risk. Again, this is why this bit of the season is so brilliant, because these are the decisions. You've got coin flips, and which way does the coin land? Are you up or you down? Don't know. You won't know for a few weeks' time. I hope Kane beats
Good
Ronaldo,
answer.
though, by the way, Andy.
But even if he does, it's not worth a transfer at the moment. I'm looking at their fixtures, Spurs, and then I think towards the end of the season he'll be coming into my team. But at the moment, I'm just not sure it's worth spending a transfer on him personally. Let's move on. Tom Bailey, top mid price replacements for Rudiger or Alonso. So he's clearly got the same team as me. Is Stones a good option given Champions League? I can answer that one. Absolutely not. And one striker the way to go. If so, who? So Rudiger to Alonso. Who are the best midfield options? We kind of talked about a template midfield, haven't we? In terms of Bowen, Gallagher, Salah are probably the best three. I would say if you haven't got any of those, I'd probably go for those three. Luke thinks Rafinha is not far from that by the sound of it. Anyone else, Carl? Anyone else in midfield who takes your eye at the moment?
No, I'd definitely be going for Rafinha if it's earlier on during the season. Going back to Maddison or one of the Leicester boys would be an option if they get their extra games bringing forward.
Yeah.
I'll give you a bit of a left field shout, and you'll probably all laugh at me for this, but and it is a bit dependent, but I do back what I say earlier that Newcastle will be a better team in a few games. St. Maximum 3.8, exact same price as Rudiger. You've got a striker playing for a team that are fighting for survival and will be stronger. And that I can't remember what their fixtures are like, but he could be a little just placeholder that, okay, well, I'm just going to keep my money safe, know that I've got the exact money to go straight back to Rudiger. So he could be a real left field shout. But really, if you're talking midfielders, if you haven't got Bowen, you haven't got Gallagher, Rafinha, I know, but I mean, for me, he's just a stick and forget player. Maybe Ramsey, just free up the cash so you've got the budget. But yeah, I think maybe St. Max is a complete wild card shout.
I think that's not a bad shout at all, in all honesty. I think it's good. And now I was just actually looking at Palace's fixtures. We mentioned Gallagher. If you need any more confirmation of what a good buy he is, I'm sure Carl will know this, but they've got Hartlepool on Saturday in the FA Cup, and then they go Norwich and Brentford straight away after that. So if you don't own Gallagher, just get him. I would even argue that someone like maybe, I don't know, Edouard or someone along that, he's looking for like a really, really short-term, low-owned punt. Maybe someone like that, because Hartlepool, as we know from watching Soccer Saturday, do concede a lot of goals. Jeff Stelling's team. Edouard or whoever starts that game could have a decent one if you're looking for a really, really sort of low-owned player there. And Todd, yeah, just is one striker the way to go? If you guys had to name, if you had to right now go 5-4-1 from next week for the rest of the season, who would your one be?
Jota.
What do you think, Carl?
It's so hard. What Brozier of Southampton I would go for, because I would go back to my graphs.
Yeah, I think I'd go for Jota, but if I was to go massively heavy, I think Brozier as well. So I think Jota and Brozier are two excellent picks, aren't they? I think moving forward, and just combined, I think they cost the same price as Kane or Ronaldo.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Because what is it? 4.7 and 2.4, so 7.1. So yeah. I think they're two. If you have them two up front, and you have that strong back five and a strong keeper, and then that amazing midfield, and you just keep maybe rotating I don't know, whoever it is. It's such a strong team. It's such a different season to normal seasons because such value players, and this is where there's such cheap players which just make the game a 10 or 9 or even 8-man game, doesn't it? But Okay, Vadim asks, looking at form and fixtures, are you tempted to select or offload any of the underperforming big strikers? Or we just talked about that. I do think it's probably fair to say that in the short term, I wouldn't. If you already hold, I wouldn't offload Kane or Ronaldo in the short term. They both have plenty of fixtures, plenty of good fixtures as well. And Lukaku obviously has the Plymouth game this weekend before. You definitely want to shift him on then. So, yeah, any arguments against those chaps? If you're holding them, would you offload them at the moment?
Only for, well, I think we've made the point. I'll offload potentially Kane for Salah, but no, Kane's ceiling's high, Ronaldo's ceiling's high. Somebody's going to win by owning them at some point.
Gerald Buckland, any of the January sign-ins look decent? So we've already mentioned Luca Dean, who I think he's 3.9, who's pretty good. Any other interest in any? I can't even think of any at the moment, to be honest, who would even slightly flicker my interest. Anything you guys?
I don't know, how much is Kieran Tierney coming at for Newcastle? I mean, I'm not advocating Newcastle. It sounds like I'm really pro Newcastle right now. But again, if they do get some good signings. I mean, Carl, you're laughing. You just sold Dele Alli. I mean, come on. He may go to Newcastle.
That's in my second team. No, it's just you said Kieran Tierney from Arsenal, and I thought what you talk about him.
No, not Tierney. Trippier. That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, I haven't heard of that one.
No, Trippier. That's what I mean. Sorry, yeah.
So that's why I was laughing at the point.
Yeah, he could be a half-decent shout, but again, and this is always the argument when you go for those sorts of players. Is Trippier, however much he is, even if he's like cheap, like 3.1
pieces. It's 3.2.
Okay, he's 3.2, and Reece James is 3.9. There's no arguments. There's not even.
Completely.
It's just and this is why it's so tough to recommend differentials, because there's such cheap players who will outperform them by an absolute mile. No.
I don't think there is. Thinking about it, there's
maybe
not
Luca
really,
Dean. Luca Dean's not.
Well, you could argue Coutinho could score a hat trick one week, but I don't know. He's not the player.
You're taking out someone again to. You're taking out someone to bring him in, aren't you?
You're losing someone like Jota or Antonio for him.
Exactly.
Same price. I mean, no, thank you.
Gary P asks about FA Cup. We've answered that one, and Gary P also asks Ronaldo or Bruno. I've got to say, I'm not tempted by Bruno in the slightest, in all honesty. I know he obviously scored the cup against Villa when Ronaldo was on the pitch, but you'd expect Ronaldo to play now. And, if Ronaldo gets injured, potentially Bruno, but then you'd probably go to Salah or Kane anyway, wouldn't you? Carl, have you got any interest at all in Bruno?
Not really. The problem is with Bruno, we know what he's done in previous seasons, so what he's capable of. But once Ronaldo's been there this year, I think he hasn't hit, whether it's a formation change or a style change, he hasn't hit the same heights. And one or two games, it wouldn't be enough evidence to persuade me to go in for him. So no, but you can always watch and see how things develop. But at the moment, definitely not.
Luke, any interest in Bruno at the moment?
He makes me nervous. So, at the start of the season, how many of us started with Bruno? I mean, I think he was the highest owned player, wasn't he? But the Ronaldo does to Bruno what he does in Portugal. He makes him a worse player. Like, not necessarily in terms of team contribution, but for fantasy points. So the only way I'd really justify Bruno, I mean, if Ronaldo got a bad injury and was out for the rest of the season, he'd be straight in my team, in my opinion, because he's back on pens. He's then the main man. He's going to play every minute he's fit. But personally, I don't want to touch either of them because Ronaldo's legs have gone a little bit. And United don't really want to play his football. And Bruno isn't the same player if Ronaldo's on the pitch. So Yeah, sort of talked about this earlier. De Gea, if you're going Man United play, he's the only one that probably really won.
Finally, we've had some email questions of Simon, who is the most enthusiastic TFF player I've ever seen. He absolutely loves it. He's having his best ever season. He's inside the top 1K with 20 plus transfers left. So for him, he's absolutely flying regardless. His first question, a bit of an interesting one actually. Do you have any advice on what to do to finish high up the league? He has a nicely structured team, but unsure on next steps to accelerate progress. Might go for 3-for-1s, go for differentials. I'm unsure, as in a very different position to where I am usually. It's a really interesting question, because when you do get high, you're a bit, so it's just a bit alien to you on what to do in terms of staying there or kind of acceleration. I suppose my answer would be just keep doing exactly what you're doing, which is very likely playing very patiently, being very sensible with your transfers and not wasting them. And if you do see any opportunities, but I would just, you've used half your transfers now to get into a good spot, I would purposely just do exactly the same as you're doing. Any advice, guys, on that?
Same, mate. I agree with that.
Carl, anything?
Yeah. Well, the only thing I'd sort of say is make sure that you keep enough back for the running, like Luke was mentioning before about the quarterfinals. As soon as the quarterfinals are done, that you've got enough to sort of like take advantage of the teams going to the FA Cup final. So you want to sort of like still keep about 10 behind. So you can use your others how you wish, taking advantage of extra fixtures, etc., what we talked about. But make sure that you've always got enough in your back pocket for that final push in terms of the FA Cup.
I mean, just on that, just a bit of a tangent on the pure maths of that FA Cup game, because it is another game that nobody's going to realistically be fielding 11 playing players in the TFF game. So ordinarily, you're looking for 10 points to transfer. That's because other people are probably getting 2 to 4 points for their players. So if for that last transfer, you really only need to get about 6 points for the transfer, because other people won't have 4, 5, 6 players. So that's I talk about targeting those FA Cup games because traditionally it's at the end. I know the last couple of seasons the Premier League's finished after it, but if it is, and I can't remember where it drops, if the final is the last game, then there's even more kind of precedence to target it, because you will have players, and the more you've got, nobody else will have that many players, and that's why you can get some massive wins in those last games. So it is a really important factor at the end, but I can't remember if it falls before or after the final Premier League game.
I think it's on week 37, and
so it's less relevant this season again.
Yeah, but you still probably get the games moved beforehand. But,
yeah, just keep doing, Simon, exactly as you're doing. You've timed it perfectly. You've got 20 plus transfers. I think his last question is an interesting one as well, because I'm a bit gutted he forgot who I picked, but he said review of your individual shout out plays from the last pod. He put yours, Fergie, I forget. I'll just say I picked out 2 players, and they were Jota and Bowen, by the way. Luke, he remembers yours, Luke, was Kane. And Carl, he remembers yours as well, who was Norman from Norwich. But he forgets Jota and Bowen. Who scored most? But interestingly, he says, and this is interesting to the strategy, he says, do you have a shout-out player from now until the next pod? Because personally, I looked at Jota and Bowen at that point, and you just get a sense of the form, the fixtures, wherever else they're going to go on a run. I'm not quite getting the same sense in this pod for a particular amount of players, and I think I'd hate to think this pod has been boring, because I think it's been far from boring in terms of exciting, looking forward, but I think the way we've all talked here about how we're going to manage our teams over the next month or two has been shuffle the team rounds a little bit, get rid of your Chelsea players, but in essence, prepare for the latter half of the season to really attack. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm struggling, apart from the obvious players who we mentioned, time and time again, to really pick someone. I think that one is going to really fly over this next month or so. Luke, have you got kind of anyone in mind, or any two?
I'm chucking. I mean, I can chuck. I think I've probably chucked enough random names that one of those will probably hit and 4 of them will miss. But I mean, I don't. I'm slightly nervous about the De Gea one. Thinking about it logically, that you guys have been talking about. I think, yeah, he's got a lot of games and he's making lots of saves. So yes, if you're flush with transfers, that probably makes sense if you can get to him with the money, because he's probably sort of $1 million upgrade on most of the budget keepers. Beyond that, though, I mean, I don't know. I think got piled back into Salah when he's back, but no, there'll be some play. It might be Luke Dean. It might be, I don't know. It might be one of the Newcastle boys that's random. It might be Luke Shaw. It might, there's a lot of randoms, but there's nobody with the kind of leading in form and the fixtures that I'm looking at and going, I've got to have them. I'm really super nervous. I can't think of a single player that I don't own already that I'm really, Bowen. If you haven't got Bowen, stick with what Fergie didn't say, because obviously, he's forgotten it. So yeah, I'm going to shout Bowen. Pile into Bowen.
Going for bloody Bowen. Absolutely no chance. But Bowen, Cancelo, Laporte, Gallagher. I'm not sure. I understand. De Gea is not, he's probably not in that bracket, but there are this core of 5 or 6 players that will just be season long picks. Get off Chelsea, maybe look at Jota, Salah, but other than that, I'm really struggling to find anyone to say, oh, that's look at those, whatever. I really think this is a transition period to set yourself up for a big run. Carl, have you got any thoughts, any exciting picks that you can?
Well, the problem is that when you've got so far into the season, all the data's there, and we've sort of talked about all the best value players. And there's, as Luke says, there's always going to be one who's going to have a high variance finish. But no, there is nobody. But at the beginning of the season, it's different because you've got no data, and you're trying to call through and find somebody who's cheap. Whereas now we see how everybody's getting on. So I think there's much less chance of there being a gem that you just don't know about.
Yeah, I think I'm just looking at the time, at the time when I think there will be a transition. So the FA Cup 5th round is going to be on the weekend. Of the midweek. I think it's either the 2nd of March or the 8th or 9th of March, but nothing in February. In February, just hold tight. But there will be a sea change come that time in March, I think, when Chelsea are back. Just as an example, they have an amazing run of fixtures. They're very likely going to go through in the FA Cup as well. And I just think hold tight, because there's nothing really. I know that's an incredibly boring answer for everyone, but this is the game. It's a game of discipline, right? And this is where a lot of players will now fall down, is they will chase these, what they perceive as gains, when really, if you've got those players already, there's not an awful lot there. I think if Antonio starts against Kidderminster, I chuck him in maybe.
Yeah.
If you haven't got Jota against Cardiff, maybe. Other than that, it's tough. Luke's looking at the time. Move on. It's all right. We're only 2 hours and 38 in. We're all right. We're okay. Okay.
There is one question that you haven't covered. So James Bailey's got one that you might have missed off Twitter, which was basically Arsenal out of the FA Cup and missing a few fixtures. Options to move from White and Saka. So I know you've got Saka, so I guess that's relevant. It might transition us into your team potentially, and what you're going to do with him.
Okay, we'll look at my team first then. So my my current thoughts are to go Rudiger, Alonso, and Saka. Now I can do Salah and Jota straight in, which I'd be happy with, but only leaves with 2.1 million, which I can't really afford anyone. If it was 2.2, I could have gone for Ramsey. And this is what I mentioned earlier on, maybe having to make another transfer I don't want to make to accommodate. So I've got to be honest that at the moment I'm going to wait to see who starts games. I expect Jota to play against Cardiff in the FA Cup, I would guess, probably because Salah Mane won't be back. I think that's a really good fixture. So I'll probably move Alonso to Jota to move to a 4-3-3. And then after that, it's all about when Salah's back. And then I've got to get rid of Rudiger and Saka. But, there may be an injury in that time. There may be more fixtures drop or whatever it is. This is why I like to make fixtures at the last possible kind of second. So I definitely get rid of Saka and White personally. And like I say, if you haven't got any of the players we've already mentioned, I jump on those players. Jota, Antonio, Bowen, Gallagher, Cancelo, Laporte. I haven't really got much else to add there. Have you got any other thoughts on that, gents? Would you leave him in at all?
Might leave White in. I think you've got to move Saka on because there's better value. We talked about Ramsey. Well, even just free up £1 million or whatever it is, 1.1 or something.
Yeah.
I think White's possibly cheap enough to just hold, particularly because what we're talking about is upgrading. I mean, if you're doing a double move, then you've got some of the options we've talked about, those sort of 4 million-ish midfielders and defences if you went Ramsey. So if you've got no budget left, I think if you're moving both, Saka down to maybe Ramsey if you don't own Gallagher, and then move White up to one of the a City boy or a United defender potentially, or somebody like that, I think.
And just to kind of wrap up my team, my rough plan from now to the end of the season. Like I said, I'm going to make 3 or 4 transfers in this next week or two to get Salah back and Jota back and to get rid of the Chelsea players. That'll leave me down with 17 transfers. Then at the end, I mentioned this time when United's fixtures change, West Ham's fixtures change, Spurs may have more, Arsenal may have more. I'll probably make at that time again. I don't like this 1 in, 1 out stuff. I like to transition my team for the month ahead. I think moving into March, I'll probably make another maybe 5 odd transfers, which will likely be, Ronaldo out, maybe for Kane in, maybe Antonio out for Reece James, someone else out for Rudiger. That's to kind of prepare for then, which will roughly leave me with 12 transfers left. Then going into kind of the end of March, going into April and going into May. So I'm pretty excited actually, because I've had high finishes before, but I've kind of run out of transfers right at the end, where at this point it looks like I'm going to have a good team, a good rank, and still lots of transfers left. So I'm pretty hopeful of if I don't finish in the top 100, I'll be devastated. But I think there's quite a bit of scope to finish a fair bit higher than that as well. So that's my team and plans next couple of months. Carl, what are your immediate and kind of longer term plans?
Oh, that's quite tricky. I've paid the price a little bit for being a bit greedy earlier. And like I sort of said, there's the Valentine's massacres coming up, so I've got lots of changes I've got in mind. So Laporte's going to be coming. So Laporte's coming in, and probably Kilman in defence, and sort of getting Kilman in there mainly to facilitate a bit of Kane and Ronaldo up front for a short period of time. I need to get Gallagher back, so I'm assuming he'll start against Hartlepool, because Palace have sort of said that, or have indicated that they'll be taking the FA Cup quite seriously this year. But if he doesn't play, I may then delay bringing him in, because in 2 or 3 weeks they're playing Chelsea and it's a blank, so it's like, I may wait until after that. Salah will be coming in, and it's just more about the timing. Then I've got Kane, and I bring in that's forward from Southampton. So that's my short-term need to try to transition back to a more defensive-minded team structure, and that will happen until mid-February, maybe a bit later, and then I'll need to sit tight because I haven't been as good as you both in keeping loads of transfers, and then doing my running and depending on who progresses in the cup and thinking about double game weeks, because this season has been a nightmare in so many games being cancelled, and therefore some teams, even they may not go in the cup, they may have quite a lot of fixtures just to sort of catch up. So hope that makes sense.
Fair enough. Absolutely, Carl. Thank you. And Luke, finally, short-term and long-term strategy?
I think you've convinced me on Dennis. I think I'll reluctantly let that stupidly good value go. But so yeah, Dennis, maybe Ramsdale to Gea. I'm not. That doesn't fill me full of joy doing that move, to be honest. But and then Kane or KDB will go to Salah. I just don't know which of them. It's all really about a bit of patience for me and waiting for the Chelsea boys to come back, and then Jota and Dennis will become two Chelsea defenders, and I'll be five at the back with Cancelo, Laporte, TAA, and two Chelsea. So that's really what I'm playing towards. Is just, do I want to transition to that other than Salah?
And about 15 transfers left as well. 15
transfers left, and I'm going to burn 10. Just for shits and giggles.
No, it's good. It's good, Luke. Like I say, I think I'm pretty confident I'm in a decent spot, but I think your team and your plan is even better. So you could have a hell of a year this year. Mate.
Yeah, but you're ahead of me, and you've got the advantage of players that've got all these extra fixtures and can use the transfers to, So if you do get those points, and then you transition to the team I've got, you're way ahead.
That's the plan.
It is. It is.
Let's take a quick look at the top of the Hub's TFF £200 mini league. It's being dominated.
Only one winner here.
Yeah. In 10th place is Philip Wilson. In 9th place is Lewis Stevenson. 8th place, Peter Marshall. 7th, Tim Barry. 6th, Simon Mass. Many of these guys are in the TFF WhatsApp group we have, as is Dan Sherwood, who is 1 to 5, and he has teams overall position 7th, 12th, 18th, 20th, and 38th. Now, Dan is a bloody good fantasy player. He will not have 9 transfers left in many of these teams, so Dan has got a hell of a shout of.
And he won't let us know how many he's got left.
He won't. But
if any of you people listening know Dan and he's dropped how many transfers he's got left, please message one of us, because we will love you. And Fergie will buy you 5 beers for that.
I will. I reckon Dan's got still north of 15 in most of those, because he's a very, very accomplished fantasy player. I honestly think
if you factor that in, because what were you saying, the top 100's got what, 12 left or 9 left?
9 the top 100, yeah.
Right.
9.
So if he's got 5 of the top 100 and he's got probably way above average compared to the most of it. I mean, God, what is the actual average without Dan in it?
Yeah. I think,
because Tim's up there as well. I know he's probably got about 15 to 20 left at least. So yeah, those 6 teams, they're probably waiting. Yeah, what they've actually got left is probably about 6 an average transfer for the top 100 if you take those 6 teams out.
I think Dan has got an amazing chance of winning it, because he's got those 5 teams all in the top 40. He can afford to diversify later on as well, can't he? He can do Ronaldo one, Kane in the other, or whoever, or block Chelsea or block Man City. I think Dan's got a hell of a chance of winning it. And like I say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think at least 9 of those 10 teams, or maybe 8 of those 10, are all members in our Fantasy Football Hub TFF WhatsApp group. Is there ever any evidence you need to join up? But fantastic stuff.
Yeah,
and well,
it's all down to us, isn't it, Fergie? You know, Dan's success is definitely down to the three of us.
Not down to that. It's about having an active community. But well played, everyone. They absolutely. I'm 13th in this league. I've never appeared in it. I'm 13th, so I'm hoping maybe next time we may appear in this league. All of us, hopefully. And finally, after 2 hours and 49 minutes, we come to the end, and we hope you've enjoyed another absolute marathon session. Thank you so much, Carl and Luke, for staying up. Just for those, it is 25 to 1 in the morning. But thank you so much, both Luke and Carl, for staying up. Thank you so much to everyone who's watching this back and who's listening. We really hope you enjoy it. We appreciate they're really long, but obviously, we probably maybe do one more of these this season, potentially, depending on how the season goes. Because, with the nature of the game, it moves in blocks. It doesn't move in week by week. Luke, thank you so much. And where can people get hold of you?
At FPL_equation on Twitter, and I'm fairly active in the Sky and the more active in the TFF WhatsApp groups. So those are the areas to get me.
Superb. And Carl, 8th in Sky. Carl's going to win Sky and Dan's going to win Telegraph. We have winners everywhere we look.
Apart from me.
Winners everywhere we look, and Luke. Where can we find you, Carl?
Yeah, you can probably find me best lurking around on Twitter at Darkest Jungle. It's probably the best place.
Superb. And my handle on Twitter is at FFH_Fergie. So this video recording will be on the Fantasy Football Hub, Sky and TFF YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button. It would be much appreciated after nearly 3 hours of Telegraph content. A little old like is all we want. Remember to subscribe to the channel at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen if you enjoyed your listen, and please rate the podcast and leave a comment. Don't forget that this channel as well is used for Sky Fantasy Football. We do a podcast on that every single week. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok are at FFH_HQ. Drop us a follow and please feel free to ask any questions. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you will find everything you need for fantasy football and Telegraph all under one roof, including player comparison tools, fixture ticker, Opta-stats, top player team reveals, much, much more. And Sky Planning Maestro Ian Parrin has built a Telegraph transfer planner for Hub members. And as I mentioned earlier, we also have our TFF WhatsApp group for premium members. All the links are in the description below to sign up. We're also partnered up with ffstuff.co.uk, which alongside the Hub has the best Telegraph fantasy resources you could imagine. Take a look at ffstuff.co.uk, which also has amazing resources for Sky Fantasy, FPL Dream Team and Fan Team. And I give my weekly Telegraph tips at telegraph.co.uk/fantasy sports. Do that each week. We only look at the next week, so don't be making long-term picks based on those. Fantasy Football Hub has you completely covered for everything TFF and fantasy football. From all of us here at Fantasy Football Hub, we'll see you soon. Stay safe and good night.